Someone's going to go for two and get it at some point.
It's 1:42 in the morning.
Yeah, that's all right. Number one. Shocker. Iron.
Man, give me the Trojans.
There we go. Welcome into Overtime, presented by Perfection One. As always, I'm your host, John Bruce, along with Shayne Combs, our hosts for episode 81 of Southern Ohio Sports Authority's flagship podcast show. So, how are you doing today, Shayne?
Oh, doing really well. It's been a fun week to be in the gym. Mixed in with the holiday there, had a chance to get together with the family. That's always special. But love this time of year. Love getting in the gym, seeing teams. Everybody's kind of that 0-0, 1-0, 0-1, 2-0, 0-2, 1-1. Everybody's still optimistic and feel like the very best is ahead of them, and it's made for some pretty good matchups so far.
Yeah, we've had some nice games so far. If you go back through the archives over here on Southern Ohio Sports Authority's YouTube page, you can see all of our live streams that we have done, as long as there's not some massive glitch in it, which we have not had one of those in quite a while. Yeah, so knock on wood on that. But last weekend we did 4 games over at the Zane Trace Tip-Off Classic. Once again, you can see all of those here on the YouTube channel. We started with Huntington against Man of Clear Creek. Huntington looked pretty good
Very good.
in that game. Then we had a really good game to finish that night with Fairland beating Zane Trace by a point. A really frantic last possession there. We'll talk about that game a little bit more later on as well. And then we had Thursday off, obviously, for Thanksgiving. And then Friday, we started off with a really good game with Rouse County Christian and Piketon to started things off. And then Chillicothe put on a show in that night game over Bloom Carroll. So go back, watch those games if you haven't seen them before. And then we've got a whole lot of other information and stuff out there. Chillicothe's Caden Cox was really good in that game. So we put together a little highlight clip. Not going to do that every game, but there's going to be some more of those highlight clips throughout the season as well. But if you want to see that, it's 90 seconds, jump over and watch that as well after you watch our show. And to be able to watch all of those, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then you'll be able to enable notifications, and you'll see when all of those go live as well.
Kind of normal early in the year for defense to be ahead of offense, but I really appreciated Chillicothe's defensive effort in the quarter court. I know it's fun to see Cox get out in the open court and play above the rim. You know, who doesn't love that?
Exactly.
But the coach and me really appreciated the attention to detail on the defensive end and how well Chillicothe against a really good basketball program in Bloom Carroll. I know they're young, but they're still Bloom Carroll. They were able to just completely take them out of what they wanted to do, and just real impressed with that.
Yeah, it was an outstanding performance by the Cavaliers, and their student section I thought really showed out well. I know Zane Trace is not far, but it's on the road for a non-conference game, and I was really impressed with what they were able to do. I know you were familiar with it last season, but I imagine they make a big time impact over there at the Hat Gymnasium.
Oh, no question. Chillicothe at home, that's a really good atmosphere, and they really support their team there. That place can really get rocking when you get in, especially some of those big FAC matches,
Yep.
matchups.
So it should be a fun year over for Chillicothe, but we'll get into our basketball preview. But we got a really big thing that happened in the SOSA area this week as Wheelersburg once again winning 14-0 now. The Pirates are in the state championship game for the first time since 2018. They won it in 2017. The last few years, it's been Ironton's time, but now Wheelersburg just has been outstanding all season long, and they've done it mostly with really good running game and a really good defense. So your lines have been outstanding, and they showed it off again the other night with a 24-10 win over Cardinal Mooney.
Well, you just can't compete at this level if those two things you just mentioned are not present, right? You always talk about as the weather turns, it gets a little colder deep into fall. And that's not just high school football. You see it in the college game a little bit. You see it certainly into the NFL, why home field is so important at that level. Is because they always talk about the defense and the run game will travel well. Now, let's not kid ourselves. Wheelersburg also has a chance to hit the home run every time they snap the
Yes.
ball with 2 or 3 different guys, and that helps. And then they're as good as anyone in the state, particularly in their division in terms of special teams when it
Hmm.
comes to the kicking game. But you're right. The foundation of it all is that ability to win in the trenches on both sides of the ball, and they certainly can do that.
Yeah, they've been outstanding this season. So in the 24-10 win over Cardinal Mooney, Stephen Hall, Braylon Rucker with rushing touchdowns, Elijah Brown and Rucker each ran for over 100 yards in that game as they didn't have a ton of yardage, but outgaining Cardinal Mooney by a substantial amount, especially on the ground. And then defensively, they had four interceptions.
Yeah.
Kenyon Evans, Brew Hansel, Jay King, and then Gabe Campbell had the clincher in the final moments to uh, put the game away for the Pirates defense because once the running back for Cardinal Mooney gets injured, it's just they tried to go to the air, and then once that happened, they were just you know were shut down by everything Wheelersburg did in the secondary. And then, of course, you mentioned it, but Cooper Heimbach, three field goals in the game, along a 47. So he's 18 of 21 on field goals this year. I know a couple of those misses are for 50 plus. So I mean, he is borderline automatic. And how many, you know, where we went to school, they've had some really good kickers. I don't know if they've made 18 field goals in the last decade. And it's just sometimes like they've hit 18 field goals in 14 games because they know once they get to a certain yard marker, Heimbach is so automatic, and that's such a big advantage for them.
They're playing the game more to college or NFL level.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of times, how many high school drives stall into that, 30, 25, 20, 15. They just kind of stall out, and it's four down territory if you like it or not. When you can defend at the level you're talking about, the ability to put three on the board and feel like momentum throughout the game, it's that control factor.
Mhm.
I mean, it's that ability to maybe a field goal helps you stay in a game. Maybe a field goal helps you take a deficit from two possession down to one possession, or maybe if you're up one possession, say you're up seven, now all of a sudden you're up two possessions with that defense into the second half. That's huge.
Mhm.
So it's just the ability to play the game on a higher level, and it's all because of the unique ability of that young man to extend his range out and not just make them, but make some really clutch ones.
Mhm. Yeah, and then also you have him with the ability. He's a really good pitcher too. So he had a
Mhm.
26-yard completion on a fake punt in that game as well. So I mean, it's just you, and that drive didn't end up with a touchdown. Guess what? It ended up with points
Mhm.
because that helps get them in field goal range. He hits the field goal, and
Yeah. Well, on
just
special teams, you wonder how long sometimes teams are sitting on a certain play,
mhm.
never knowing when you're going to need it. And the state semifinals certainly a nice time to pull out.
Yes,
But man, special teams. I'd heard a lot of the NFL analysts talk this afternoon as we're recording this on
yeah,
Sunday, and they were talking about how special teams just keep some people in the league. And
yep.
like sometimes you get midway through the league or in the second half of the league, you start to overlook some of the details on special teams, and it can beat you in a hurry.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. It's such a, uh, maybe, with the bigger schools, maybe with the schools with the depth of talent like a Wheelersburg has, where you can get some really good focus on there, where you're getting some really talented players, you know, to kick, but you have to have the outstanding snap, you have to have a great hold as well, and then you gotta block up front to be able to make sure that happens,
Mhm.
and because of that, they've been really successful this season. So they will take on in the state championship game. They will take on the Liberty Center Tigers. Liberty City is from Grand Theft Auto. So there you go. There's your GTA 6. I don't know if you know this. GTA
No,
6 has
no.
been allegedly coming out for like 10 years now, and it got pushed back another year recently.
No,
So
I'll take your word for
yeah,
it.
so you're welcome on that. So
Yeah.
Liberty Center, third straight year for them in the state championship game. They lost by a score 2 years ago. They lost to Ironton 28-17 last season. They're an outstanding team. They just dominated teams throughout this year. They have hammered their opponents 668-74 on the year. So
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
one of the big keys to me for Wheelersburg in this, the ball control. Your defense. has been really good throughout the season, but the less time that Liberty Center team is on the field, the less chance they have to hit those big plays. So you want to limit the big plays as well. And then I think really take advantage of the advantage that Heimbach's going to give you. Got a punt, cover it well. If you get a chance for a field goal, take the points. And I think, they'll give themselves a fighting chance. Right now, they're a 15-point underdog on Fantastic 50. And even he said today, or it might have been last night, but it was somebody said, you've been doubting Wheelersburg all year. And he said, well, they made a big jump from last year where they went 9-5. Well, from 9-5 to 14-0 right now, he said sometimes the computers take a while to adjust for all that.
Believe it.
Yeah. So, yeah. So he said, really, he said he thought Liberty Center was still favored, but it wouldn't be anywhere near the 15. It would probably be closer to a one-score game, and that is partially, because they do adjust for some things on that. But for the Pirates, you got to try to slow down Caden Kreinbrink in the passing game. He threw for 121 yards last week. Garrison Cruz had almost 200 yards all purpose. They ran for 311 yards at a 42-10 win over Indian Lake. I think if you get Ryan Meeker, Ison Emnett, the rest of that defense, and those that offensive line as well, if they play very well, you're going to give Braylon Rucker and that offense a chance to make some plays, and then that defense, if you can force Liberty Center into some obvious passing downs, maybe we can see that secondary make some big time plays again for Wheelersburg.
Well, the thing that jumps out at me when you start talking the difference of 14, 15 points, you're talking two possessions. You mentioned two areas, defense and special teams, where it doesn't take long for one bounce of the football to be a 14-point swing. When you start talking a key mistake where, maybe it's a pick six, maybe it's a sack, a strip, a scoop, and a score. In the special teams, maybe it's a big time return, maybe it is in the kicking game. It just doesn't take long for something to swing. And before you know it, you have yourself deep into the second half with a chance to win a state championship.
Yeah, and the Liberty Center last year showed the ability to give up a couple big plays. Now, Sean Terry was very special, obviously, for
He was solid.
yeah, for Ironton. But just looking at 668 to 74 is absurd.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But they haven't played a remotely close game all season.
No.
So if Wheelersburg
Good point.
you
Yeah.
can really get them into a grinded out type of game, maybe they'll give themselves a chance. You want to have a chance in the fourth quarter. Liberty Center, obviously the favorite in this game, but Wheelersburg has the ability to give themselves a chance in this game. Liberty Center hit a field goal last year, has a good kicker as well. This will be a really tough task for them, but you get to the state championship, I don't think that's ever going to be an easy game.
No. I like what you say about limit the big plays though, because if you can settle into the game into the first quarter and get into the second quarter, now all of a sudden you're trying to break the game into chunks and can you get to halftime? Can you get to the second half? And as you said, if you get into the third quarter and it's a tight game, certainly an opponent that's not used to playing that can be worth something down the stretch for sure.
Yeah, then looking through Wheelersburg's numbers, they have a lot of blowouts as well, but they had 4 games that are at least competitive to where they've played the entire night, and Liberty Center hasn't had to do that. Now, they're there for a reason, and they're there for the third straight year for a reason. So it's going to be tough for Wheelersburg, but if they can get that, make it a 4-quarter game, keep it low scoring, I like their chances to at least have a chance in this one.
Yeah, I agree. I bet best of luck to them. They've been a treat to follow. I know when we had them on our stream, that was one of my favorite teams of the year, just from the eye test in terms of like the wow factor. So they certainly belong on this level and representing the Southeast as they always do really, really well. And we wish them the best of luck.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons why they started off the first version of the list, because it was like, hey, this team is ridiculous, and it was not an accident to try to start off a new thing with, hey, this might be our best team we've had throughout the year, so let's throw them on to start this, especially when we're going in.
And remember, we talked about, we used them as an example. We used Ironton football as an example. We used the Adena volleyball as an example, and so forth. It's really important when we get our teams to the state level. and they represent in this way because I think there has been a little bit of a stereotype over the years. The Southeast kind of doesn't match up with the other corners of the state, and when we have a team that goes and does this, I think that's something we all need to rally behind because I think it really helps the growth of our area.
Yes, I agree completely. So when we're talking about growth and different things in our area, one of the things we talked about this on Friday
Yeah.
at the Tip Off Classic because we had a lot of time in between. So we did a 1 o'clock and a 7 o'clock. So we got to watch Waverly, which was fun game to watch as
Yeah.
well. We'll talk about them throughout our preview. But before even getting to our preview, we noticed it was Zane Trace. So Zane Trace and Ross County Christian. So they each had already played their varsity. They were playing a JV game because there was a team that dropped out, so they put a JV game in the 5 o'clock slot. Ross County Christian had already played. Their players came back, sat on the bench for the JV game, cheered their guys along. Zane Trace played 2 days before that, and they came and they did like the tunnel for the JV kids, and then they sat on the bench for that. So, like, that was something we talked about as culture, like building culture. And that's just those are the types of things where, you know, those younger kids that maybe, you're on JV as that's a bad thing. We always try to like celebrate, all levels and
Mhm.
there should be no stigma to playing JV basketball
No.
or any JV sport. But when you have the varsity there supporting you, that's just such a big way to build culture. So we talked about it a little bit, but what are some of the ways that you look at as some positive ways to build a winning culture, especially in a program, maybe with a newer coach, or maybe it's a new program like Ross County Christian, or a program that has gone through some laws. Now, Zane Trace has not gone through laws, but
Mhm.
a way to keep that culture going.
It's hard. It really is, and I'll be honest, it's getting harder to do. It's something that I really prided myself throughout my coaching career, and I feel like I was really good at it for most of my career. And if I'm just being transparent, it's something late in my career I struggled with. And I kind
Mhm,
of, John, if I'm being honest, it's kind of was one of those things where you started to realize that, hey, this may be showing me it might be time to kind of
mhm,
step back and do something else or whatnot, because it really is hard. Now, obviously, winning and tradition and things like that help. When you think of the definition of culture and you think of way of life or you think of sharing beliefs or different ways you go
mhm,
about things. And then what's neat about that definition is most definitions will talk about generation to generation. Now,
mhm,
maybe not stretching out that much, but in high school sense, it's from this senior class to the next senior class to the next senior
mhm,
class. And when you really have great culture, I love what you're talking
mhm,
about there because it gets passed down from the varsity to the JV to the junior high. And when you have a great senior class, it can become a positive domino effect.
mhm,
Oh, wait a minute. I looked up to so and so, and this is how he or she acted. So now when I'm a
mhm.
senior, I'm supposed to act that way.
Right.
And then I see it, and then I say, now, unfortunately, if you get it going the wrong way,
Mhm.
it can go the wrong way too, because you get a bad example. And guess what? The next person's going to set a bad example.
Yep.
And it's, so it can go both ways. But you're right. When you really get um, that value across all levels of your program. So how do you go about doing that? I think it's really important as a coach. I think Coach Jude's doing a great job of this in
Mhm,
RCCA. Uh, you have to make it important. You know what I mean?
mhm,
Like, you can't just say it's important. You have to show it. Like one thing I always try to do is really make JV baseball important.
mhm,
You know what I mean? Like the way we schedule it, the way we practice it. It wasn't just one of those because I know you coach JV to the
mhm.
point where you know how easy it is sometimes to say, "Oh, JV games canceled. We'll just do this, this,
Yeah.
and this." You always try to make it important. You always wanted to try to make sure they're getting their practice time. A junior high practice time in the gym. It's really important. Don't just throw them to the side. We got to adjust something. We need to really help them get their time, so get their gym time and get better. Invite them to things, do different things. So it is. It's a very inclusive culture. It's including everybody in it, and then you hope that as time goes on, that example is set and the culture becomes the best when it
Mhm.
is student athlete
Right.
led, because you know as well as I do, if you're an eighth grader freshman, sophomore, it means far more coming from the senior
Mhm.
teammate than it does like old guys like us that are coaching. You know what I mean? Like, so that's I think when the culture really gets set is when you start to get some of those great relationships throughout the different age groups in your program.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually saw him last night. Was Isaac Little was a type of kid. When I was coaching at Uniota, he was a senior that was working his way through an injury. So he came down for a practice. It was he was like he's going to practice multiple times in that day. So we start running some drills, and we did a lot of the same drills as the varsity was doing. And he's coming out, and he is just going at such a different level than everyone else. And he's just like, "Let's go, pick it up, pick it up. We got to get moving." And because he wanted everyone to be at the same level he was,
Mhm.
and it wasn't. There was no writing guys for not getting to that level. It was, "Hey, let's pick it up. Let's make this a better drill. Let's make this tighter." And from that day on, I think it was he might have came in one other day, but from that day on, the rest of our practices were just better because they're
Mhm.
like, "Well, I see what this 1,000-point scorer does.
Yeah.
If I wanna, I'm on."
Even though Coach Bruce told us this before,
Yeah,
what's he know? You know,
exactly. So it's just one of those things where, you see what the varsity guy does, and
yeah,
you're like, "Man, I
yeah.
if I wanna play like he does on Friday, Saturday night, maybe I gotta do it better Monday
Mhm.
through Thursday," or whatever your practice times are at this point anyway. So that does make a big time difference. So when you talk, culture, and winning culture, where, I'll use, Daisha Reed from, Portsmouth.
Mhm.
She graduated from last year. We'll see what her big impact was as, what she was able to do, because you could just tell energy-wise, that's just a big energy player that they're gonna have to replace. But I feel like what she was probably able to do in practice is probably gonna carry on to some of those younger kids, and, you can see that beyond when the person's in school, but you can see it at the next level as well.
Oh, there's no question, and it's the one phrasing I always hear, "You become too cool for school." When
Mhm.
you start getting some older kids that develop that attitude, man, that can spread the wrong way through your
Mhm.
program too. When you get the older kid of like, no, it's go time. Hey, here's how we have a good time in the locker room. We have a good
Mm,
time on the bus. We do some
mm,
different things.
yeah,
But like when it's go time and we flip the switch, this is how you run the drill.
mhm,
This is how you go about it. When a coach, I remember showing a clip one time to a JV group of a varsity coach yelling in a huddle at the varsity team. I was
mm,
showing it to the JV
yeah.
group. And I mean, this coach was it was a good one, right? I mean, this coach was really giving it to the starting five. They weren't playing up to the
Mm,
standard, and
mhm,
it was a very fair butt chewing
yeah,
because it was and every single one of those, it was a girls' team. Every single one of those starters looking right in the eye. Even when the manager was coming here, they were looking here, and the eyes never left coach and the
mhm,
different. And I was sharing that with the JV team. I said, when you guys talk about being ready for varsity, there's three or four of you that might have broke down in tears before
mm,
that timeout was over. You know
right,
what I mean? Like just again, the example of maturity and the example of how you conduct yourself. It's far more than just playing the game. There's a
mm,
lot of kids that are talented. That's why too with culture, what makes it harder is because of our little league culture and because of our acceleration of playing in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade. Now what happens is we have more
mm,
young kids playing varsity than
mhm,
ever before. And I'll let you decide if that's good or bad. That's not what this is about. This is about culture. But what I can tell you is the skill set may be there. That doesn't mean you've matured. You're
right,
still 13, 14 years old sometimes. And, you know, when you're coming in out of junior high and you're playing and you're getting into some of those open gyms,
mhm,
you're being invited in the summer. Now all of a sudden you become what, 14, 15 years old and you're on a varsity basketball floor. That's a different thing.
oh,
So
yeah,
all of that stuff can impact culture for sure.
mhm, so, I think this is a good talk. We'll go back into this a little bit throughout the year.
Pay attention to
Yeah,
it when you go to your games. Just
yeah,
watch team. You can tell if a team likes each other just by watching them play. Do they sprint to help each other up? How do they conduct themselves? on substitutions? How do they conduct themselves on the bench? Just watch. They'll almost tell you if they like each other just by how they play together.
But also, if they're sprinting to help each other get up, are they looking at the coach first before they do it? Because then that might just be a, "Hey, we're gonna get our butts chewed if we don't do this," type of thing. I think you've
Yeah.
seen that at different times because sometimes those teams that look over at the bench before they go do it, late in the game, they're not doing the same thing as they are
Mm,
early in the
yeah.
game. Late in the season, they're not doing the same thing. But if you're seeing it with immediately, "Oh, Johnny takes a charge, let's go get him up," that's when you see it a little bit more. And
Yeah.
I think we saw it a little bit, trying to think of it was, there was a late foul in that Piketon and Ross County Christian game, and it was Bo Henry from Piketon, and he wasn't the one who fouled, but he immediately went over to, the player after it was kind of a hard foul, and the way everyone kinda reacted, I think may have helped it not be called an intentional foul because it was just a hard hustle play and wasn't anything bad, but it was like you could just tell those Piketon kids know the value of the sportsmanship as well
Mhm.
as, and that's one of those things that I think is a good culture moment down there at Piketon as well, even though it wasn't even his own teammate. It was just knowing the situation.
Understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so culture is a big thing. And, you'll see it throughout the season as well when you get out to a lot of games. So
Mhm.
before we get into our basketball preview, we're going to talk about, there's not a lot on the bottom line this week that you're going to see scrolling by. There's going to be a lot more next week coming up, but we want to talk about our live streams real quick. Monday, we are going to be, we'll do a review of it uh, near the end of the show, but Piketon at Logan Elm girls basketball that's going to be live streamed. Look, check out for the link about 6:30 on Monday. So the
Mhm.
show comes out on Monday. A lot of people watch it early on Monday, but if you don't see it on Monday, if you don't watch this until like Tuesday or beyond, just make sure you check out the archives if you missed that game. So Piketon at Logan Elm should be
Yeah.
a really good girls game on Monday. Tuesday, we will be Carson and myself will be at Zane Trace once again. It'll be Westfall at Zane Trace. Boys action, start of SVC play. So there's going to be a lot of league plays starting. I think some are starting on Mondays in the
Mhm.
boys, but I know the SVC starts on Tuesday. And then we're off as far as live streams until Saturday. Saturday, Shane and I will have Megs at Westfall Boys. It's a 4:30 start, so kind of a unique time for that. And then right after will be the girls' game between Southeastern and Westfall. So a lot of Westfall Mustangs this week on the live streams. But we're gonna get an SVC girls game following that boys game. So you'll see those running along. Check out our live streams throughout the week. And then after this week, we'll be going outside of the SVC a little bit. Um, but it should be a fun week to start.
Oh, I'm really excited watching the early matchups, Pike and Logan Elm. I'm really looking forward to pulling
Mhm,
that with you. And then when you think of standings, I don't care if it's game one or if it's 2 months from now. In boys basketball, you start talking Westfall Zane Trace. I think
mm,
you and Carson have a standings type
yep,
of game there. The Westfall Megs. That's an outstanding
mm,
non-conference boys matchup. Two teams that probably are eyeballing 17, 18, 19 win
mhm,
type seasons, right?
yep,
And then Southeastern Westfall, again, two teams. If you look at some preseason prediction, it's kind of a standings game in
mhm.
terms of who's going to, set the tone ahead of the other. So I think we have some really good ones here in the upcoming week. Looking forward to doing it.
Yeah, it should be a fun week for sure. So now, last week we did our girls basketball preview, which was episode 80. So if you want to check that out, as always, the timestamps are down below. Do we always said that early in the episodes? And I always forget to do it. So timestamps are going to be below. If you,
Well,
yeah,
Dewey sets a standard that we're all chasing here a little
exactly,
bit too.
yeah.
So I mean,
So we miss you, Dewey, sometimes. So for the boys basketball, we're going to jump into the preview for last week. If you watched the girls preview, we went league by league, alphabetical order. We are just going to do the exact same thing. So maybe in the spring, we might go reverse alphabetical order. I probably will forget that because that'll be in another 10 to 12 episodes. So we'll probably forget about that by then. But we're going to start off in the FAC, the Frontier Athletic Conference. Last season had a really good year, a great year in football this year, but Miami Trace won the FAC last season. They had a perfect regular season, 21-0. They fell against Steubenville in the district finals. So in Division Three, there was only 6 teams in the Southeast, so they had to join with the East to get a winner. That Steubenville team was
Yeah.
unreal, down to the convo. So Steubenville ends up beating Miami Trace um, to break up their perfect season, but Miami Trace, an outstanding year. Adam Guthrie, you're going to hear that name. If you haven't heard that name a lot on overtime, you haven't been paying attention because we've been talking about him all season long. The Clemson commit is back again this season. District 14 Player of the Year last year. And they also have Julian Baker, Gage Bowers, who were outstanding last season, many more. A lot of talent back from last year's outstanding team. They already beat Megs to open up their season. So that was a big time win at Megs
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
I believe that was Saturday night.
Saturday, I
Yeah,
think. Yep.
so just a really good win for the Panthers. They look to return as FAC champions from a year ago.
Yeah, and they ended up doing it pretty convincingly. I think like 71-54 pulled away there later
Mhm.
on. And you're right. I mean, I really like the Bowers kid at the point a year ago. He's going to make a year's growth. Obviously, Division 1 type athletes in Baker and Guthrie, but Guthrie just puts the entire opposing coaching staff scratching their heads
Mhm.
sometimes because what do you do with him? And I watched last year. I probably had a chance to see him in person. I think 4 times on film, another 3 or 4. And I've watched teams go about it all sorts of different ways.
Mhm.
You know, you play him straight up, and before you know it, he had a 12-point first quarter.
Mhm.
Or if you're going to send the double, triple teams, you might have 4 assists because he had capable shooters, out around the court. And you'd think, okay, we're gonna pick the tempo up and make him run. Well, then all of a sudden, again, you're talking about a Division 1 athlete. He'll make trips with you. By no means is he going to slow his team down. He's going to allow his team to play whatever tempo that they want to play on that
Mhm.
night. So he's so complete. He has absolutely incredible feet.
Mhm.
Old school footwork, really, really fun to watch down in the post. The old back to the basket. We think he's gone away in the game. When you watch him, you'll think otherwise.
Right.
He's really, really, really good team guy. And he alone certainly makes them at the top as a team that everybody's chasing. I think for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned Bowers. Last year, he had a game winner against Jackson, so
Yes.
they trusted the freshman to take a big shot in a really good game there. Man, it's a really well coached team with Miami Trace as well. So you talked about Guthrie and what all he can do, but man, they are a really talented group, well coached. Look for them at or near the top of the FAC once again, and in the Southeast District. So we talked about Jackson. They went 8-2 last season. They lose a heartbreaker at Miami Trace. Um, they finished second in the FAC, and then they were upset by Waverly in the district semifinals. But man, they've got some really talented pieces. Ryan Simons, Bodie Wolford, Stephen Jenkins, Charlie Woodard, 17-7 a season ago.
Yeah, just really athletic, really strong. In the scrimmage area, their execution's really, really good. Their physicality transforms from the football field over to the basketball court. When it comes to screening, bumping cuts, 50-50 balls on the glass, they really can beat you up a little bit. And you're right, they were that close to meeting Miami at 9-1 and sharing that
Mm.
title. And then, everyone's starting to chase them. But I'll say this, John, I know we're going to get to this a little bit. It's kind of interesting how in football, the FAC, the rest of the teams got a little bit better, and it just kind of put a little bit more pressure. Now, those two still stood at the top,
Yeah.
but I think they were more, I think they'd be the first to tell you they were more challenged at the
Mhm.
top. I think basketball is going to bring more of the same.
Yeah, I agree with that completely now. So Coach Morrow's team has a lot of talent back and should be fun to watch. They've got a big one at Logan Elm on Tuesday. So that'll be one to
Very good.
to keep an eye on for this upcoming week. So we'll talk more game by game stuff next week.
Yeah.
So starting next week, where we're going to try to split it up, girls and boys, pretty evenly, and then we're going to talk a lot more game stuff. So we may review that game, um, talking about that season opener because Logan Elm looked really good in
I
their
thought they looked
opener.
really good.
Yeah. So we talked Jackson, we've talked Miami Trace, but man, you mentioned it early. Chillicothe 6-4 last year, finished third in the FAC. But man, that length and athleticism they have on the defensive end is ridiculous. Caden Cox, Cooper Stone King in the backcourt, just a really dynamic group. Once again, if you haven't seen it, the little highlight tape of Caden Cox put together a really nice game and didn't really have to do a whole lot as far as the scoring throughout the game. But man, he had some really nice plays in that. Andrew Hammond, Noah Netter has just grown by leaps and bounds, and that's not even mentioning some more of the length that they have coming off the bench as well.
Well, last year, Chillicothe went through some adversity in the post, and as a result, Netter got a little bit more time, and all of these different things that happen. You'll hear us give examples of that in some other conferences that we talk about some key positions. But the Noah started to get some minutes. All of that's going to pay off into this year because now you look, as you said, Stone King and Cox coming back, Hammond's versatility, and then you throw Netter in the middle and he's protecting the rim. He
Mm.
can finish around the rim on the offensive side. Then you get really long and athletic. Carter Williams, Kayvon Pleasant. They even used Jordan Swanasing coming in to pressure the ball a little bit the other night. Um, it's just there's a completeness to the team that really starts on the defensive end and creates to the offensive side. As I said on the air the other night, I think Stone King's ability to handle the basketball is going to be really big.
Mm.
I think Cooper and Caden would tell you themselves that in the perfect world they prefer the wing. They
Mhm.
prefer to play off the ball a little bit, but by Stone King taking over some of those point guard responsibilities for Coach Beard, it allows them to put some unique combinations on the court,
Mhm.
and man, they're going to be really good. Another name I'll throw out there. I don't know all the behind the scenes stuff, and it's none of my business. I'm just making an observation from
Yeah.
last year. Eshawn Brown,
Mm.
he ran the point for their JV
Mhm.
team last year, and he got better every week.
Mhm.
You know, he's a young man who does have some more um, true point guard skill set
Mhm.
to where just run the floor. Won't be huge minutes, but if it ends up being just a little 8, 9, 10 minute spurt as the year goes on, that could be something
Yes.
that certainly is key for the Cavs as
Yeah,
well.
if you can get Stone King to where he can go off screens instead of, bringing the ball up and then
Yeah,
setting up the offense and then maybe
yeah,
getting into stuff, if he can just go straight as that wing,
yeah.
that just makes that offense even more dynamic. Because to me, when I look at it, the offensive end is maybe the biggest question mark. Because when we
Mhm,
saw him last year in person, the offense wasn't really there yet. The defense was, and then the offense seemingly at times was, and
mhm,
playing off of the defense a lot, in defense into offense. But if they can really get that offense to play at a high level,
mhm.
which I mean, really in that Blue Carroll game didn't really have to. So, but I would like to see them throughout the year just continue to grow that offensive game because man, right now I can't imagine there's a whole lot of teams looking when they get that film being like, man, we're excited to play
Yeah.
Chillicothe because
Well, and you talk about complete, like when you start wanting to play with the Miami Traces and the Jacksons, you can't get so predictable. You can't be so specialized. So the thing I noticed the other night is obviously Stone King can shoot it, but I saw an ability to create a little bit more off the dribble for himself and
Mhm.
others. I made the comment on the air after I taught language arts for 20 years. I don't know if unguardable is a word, but it is basketball wise, I
Right.
guess. I was saying that Caden Cox is going to start to shoot it at a high percentage from 2, 3 feet off the line. Good luck. I mean,
Yeah.
so you're right. Miami Trace Jackson still has a lot of weapons, a lot of capabilities to contain those types of athletes. But with that said, I can't imagine you turn on the film and to steal your line there. Oh, I can't wait to play
Right.
Chillicothe.
Yeah. So, and then one of the things that we did all throughout the football season, we awarded a Perfection One Collision of the Week. We're trying to do something different in basketball now. It didn't work out the exact way that we were hoping to because I don't know if any of our, like the 6 teams we covered took a charge in the in the games.
No, we had some outstanding
Yeah.
charges just from people outside our area.
Yeah.
So
So
so the moral of the story is like we need our SOSA area to get on the midline, get over there outside the paint, get set, take a charge.
exactly. So we're gonna swing our Perfection One Collision of the Week this week. It's gonna go to Caden Cox as he finishes off a fast break with a two-handed jam. After it was a really nice pass from Kayvon Pleasant, just an outstanding pass on the fast break, but also Noah Netter with a huge block off the glass that set it up. So that's going to be our collision one or perfection one collision of the week this week. And remember that you can find Perfection One in Pickaway, Pike, and Ross counties. And when you meet them, you will find why they are highly recommended. So this Chillicothe team, which I know there's a Perfection One right by Chillicothe as well. So, or at least there was. I can't guarantee that. I know there's one by my house. I saw one down the street as I was driving out of town the other day. I was like, "Oh, there's one. There's one more." So you can find a lot of them throughout Pickaway, Pike, and Ross counties as well. So, moving on, not just Chillicothe, Jackson, Miami Trace. There's going to be outstanding teams as well. Washington, I think, returns a really interesting group. Noah
Yeah.
Haithcock, really talented. Justin Everhart might be the best shooter in the league. They've got a lot of experience from that team a year ago. They went 9-14. They lose to Waverly in the tournament, but I think they've got a chance to be a really interesting team.
Yeah, they really do. 3-7 in that conference a year ago. You think, well, that's not very good. Man, 3-7, that close to 5-5.
Mm,
That conference is a bear, especially when you consider 6 of your games are against who we just went over
mm,
there at the top. But you're right about Everhart. Had 18 in the win over Westfall to
mhm,
start the year. Haycock and Heath also in double figures. So you start getting three guys that you can count on to give you that type of point production. Well, now all of a sudden you have some other athletes that can blend in and start to give you things, and you can start to match up. The margin of error, not very much when
mhm,
you're playing the level of competition we just went over. But I think it illustrates the point I was trying to make, that in football we saw glimpses of it. Basketball, I would still put those teams up there at the top if I had to predict. But I think the gap is closing in, and they're just going to feel that, man, it's not easy to go on the road to Courthouse. It's not easy to go on the
yep.
road to Hillsborough. It's not easy to go on the road to McLean. They're going to feel it a little bit more this year.
Yeah, and that's a Washington team with a really nice season opening win over Westfall.
Yeah.
So we talked about Westfall's going to be a really good team in the SVC. But then Hillsborough and McLean, we kind of group them together a little bit. But Hillsborough, you lose Tate Davis, who was outstanding a year ago, District Player of the Year. And but man, Jack Allen can really play. Trey Captain can really play. So what does Hillsborough have depth wise beyond those two? I think that's going to be the biggest key for them. McLean, Jordan Bell had a really nice season a year ago. Can these teams find the depth to compete with those teams above them to, make a dent in the standings and then ultimately, just have a really nice season?
Well, I think Hawks still having 15 against Wilmington the other night. That's a
Mhm.
step in the right
Yep.
direction in terms of what you're talking about. You're right about Allen. He can really, Hillsborough had to be a team. They were really good, but the,
Mm,
the result's the result. And they had to have a little bit of a bitter taste in their mouth about where the season went last
mhm,
year because, again, it was so close to going right back. But if you remember, 2 years ago, they were really knocking on the door, and it looked like they were going to be in position to challenge these teams at the top. And then last year, it's kind of like, okay, Chillicothe got better, and all of a sudden, before you know it, you take a step
mhm,
back. Um, but Howland's someone that gets to the line, shoots at a really high
mhm.
percentage. You mentioned Captain, you mentioned Hoxtell. Danbert, we know that name from
Yep.
football.
Yep.
Some really good athletes. If they can really defend, I think because they have great guard play, they're always going to have a chance.
Mhm,
And over their careers, they've shot the ball at the free throw line at a high percentage. So
mhm,
they're tough matchups if they can live at the free throw line, get some easy points that way. I don't know if they have enough over the course of 10 games in the FAC to
mhm.
challenge at the top, but don't be surprised if some of those talented guards led by Howland get going one night and pull one of the bigger upsets of the year.
Yeah, I agree completely. So keep an eye on the FAC. So looking forward to getting over there and seeing some of those games and some of those outstanding gems throughout this winter. So now we're going to move on to the MSL Buckeye. Last year, Hamilton Township won the Buckeye, going 11-1 in league play, and they had a bad finish to the year. Dropped 4 of their last 5 games, bowed out of the tournament earlier than they wanted. At one point, they were 16-2. They finished 17-6.
Mm.
They're led by Javon McBride, 24.9 points a game last season as a junior. He did get hurt in football, so he's dinged up a little bit. If he's not 100%, no one's going to feel bad for the Rangers because you got Lucas King, who averaged 14-9 a season ago. So, I mean, they're going to be a really talented team, well coached group at Hamilton Township. Probably the favorites again this year, but there's some really talented teams coming up in the MSL. To me, at the top of that list, a team that finished second last year, Circleville. They went 14-10 on the season. They had some games where it felt like they just were not maybe locked in as much as they needed to be, or when things went wrong, they kinda snowballed a little bit. I know like that, the Zane Trace game to open last year, it got bad in a hurry in that. That was a tight game that just got out of control. The Uniota game, they just decided to just not guard Caden Gutright, and he goes for 30, and it's a blowout, and to me, those teams probably should have been a little closer than they were, and it seemed like they figured some things out later in the year, but man, they're really talented. Cole Nunguster running the point for them, Jack Klein, Riley Jenkins, Ed Kirk. That gives them a really nice top four players. They've got some kids that have won in some different sports as well. So you got some talented baseball kids that are going to be competing for them. Is this a time that they can finally break through and win the Buckeye? I don't know the last time they even won it. Going back 20 years, it's been over 20 years. So is this a type of team that can finally break through?
I think the answer is yes. Is it the type of team that can? Again, what happens to your point, the winning a conference championship is such a start to finish grind that you
Mhm,
just can't take nights off. And when you mention Hamilton Township, assuming they're healthy, they're
mhm,
going to have a couple guys there at the top of the roster who just fall out of bed and get 40
mhm,
together. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just so you can't afford to let up any night and let one get away that you're supposed to get. And as we go down through this list, I think you're going to find that there's not a whole lot of gimmies
yeah, there's no nights off.
in this league. So, and the nature of basketball, particularly on the road, it can really test your focus and so forth. So, to answer your question, I think yes, it's the type of team that can. What 8-4 last year,
Mhm,
so
yeah,
they weren't that far off. But again, the difference between 8-4 and 10-2 doesn't sound like much, but it's a little bit of a bigger gap to jump over than you think sometimes when it comes to going from, hey, we're pretty good to we're championship level.
mhm. Here's the first 6 games for Circleville. So they start with Bloom Carroll, then you're on the road for 4 at Logan Elm. That's gonna be on Friday. We might take that one in just watching it. At Washington, at Menford, at Hamilton Township, and then you get Fairfield Union. That's all within the first 2 weeks of the season. So, I mean, we're gonna see immediately how prepared Circleville is.
We are, and as I was listening you rattle those off, you're not only getting tested throughout the non-league, but you have to really highlight those league opponents
Mhm,
and you know that first league round, if you're able to play out in front, boy, does that put a lot of pressure on the opponent. So
mhm,
you mentioned what Logan Elm and Hamilton Township there real soon. That's going to be a big factor.
mhm.
Bloom Carroll, you mentioned them.
Yes.
We saw Bloom Carroll the other night playing 7 sophomores, 12 guys on the roster. I think 7 of them were sophomores. I think early is the time to play them.
Mhm.
I think they're going to be a completely different team the second league round.
Right.
So yeah, not a bad draw for Circleville, being a more experienced team,
Yeah.
but can they take advantage and get off to a good start?
Yeah, especially with those road games as
Yeah.
well. So, then just going to another one, the one I wrapped up that 6-game stretch with is Fairfield Union, who's gonna be fairly young. A lot of juniors, a really good sophomore in Asa Klein. They went 12-12 a season ago.
Mhm.
New head coach John Helber, who coached at Logan, had some success over there, has been a longtime assistant at Fairfield Union under Coach Schaefer. So, it's good to keep that, continuing on the program, which has been really good over the last decade. After a long time of Fairfield Union not being very good, the last decade, Falcons have been really good. So, Travis Utzinger going to lead a really good group of juniors, but man, that's going to be. I think we're going to see early if they can get there a year ahead of time because I think next year they're probably the favorites, but with so many juniors and a really good standout sophomore, could be a tough start to the year for them.
I like the way you said that because one of the things I had in my notes was, is the time now or are they a year away?
Hmm.
As a coach, I never wanted to hear that. I mean,
Right.
time's now. I mean,
Yeah.
we go to practice every day. We're not going to practice tomorrow thinking like, hey, I hope we're good next year. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? You're going to practice tomorrow to beat your next opponent.
Hmm.
So like, when you're 12-12, winning's hard.
Mhm,
Okay. So when you're 12-12, you put yourself in a position to prove that you can play with the majority of your schedule. Now you want to take a step forward And what better way than to prepare yourself for next year than to go out and have a great season this year and put yourself in a position to compete?
And then speaking of top first 6 games, so here's a first 6 games. Welcome back to the sidelines, Coach Helber. You've got Hamilton Township to open, then you're at Vinton County, who's 1-0, at Logan Elm, Jonathan Alder, at Circleville. So they get the 4 road games in a row. And then, just sneak in Warren in there before Christmas as well. So I don't care if they're 0-6 before Christmas. They're a team that I'm gonna look at, throughout the year, but that's a really tough stretch. If they can go 3-3 in that stretch, I think some really good things can happen for
Well,
Fairfield
you
Union.
start talking 12 and 12 year in, year out when you're playing that type of schedule, it tells you that they're a very capable team.
Yes, so, keep an eye on Fairfield Union for sure, and then Logan Elm. We talked about them. I thought they looked so much better in that game against Bexley than they did a season ago. Maybe it was, last season you looked all to, hey, Nehemiah Wall, all Ohio kid, just an outstanding player. But maybe it was, you know, I know Nehemiah's going to do it. Well, now it's going to be a bunch of different guys. Look like Brady Neff. He took some big shots in that game for them. Lucas Biley. They've got some really talented seniors in that group. Those are maybe the top 2 names that come off, but overall, they've got a lot of really good seamers. Another one,
Thought Kelton Bennington was really good
Bennington
the
was
other day.
really good the other day. So, they're a team. Something that hasn't happened for a long time for them. 3 straight losing seasons for Logan Elm. They get to the Convo a couple of seasons ago, but they're a group that they're hungry. That's a culture, by the way. They're
Mhm.
just whole time, everybody, every shot, their bench is up, and it doesn't matter who's in. It's they're into the game all throughout the game, and that's a culture thing to me, where Logan Elm has had years of a really good culture, and I think that can pay off with a turnaround season for them.
Yeah, I agree. There's a toughness there and a basketball IQ. Patton was really solid the other day. We
Mhm.
know from last year, Russell can help spread the
Mhm.
floor. Um, it's a team where I hear what you're saying about Wall and his individual talent a year ago. But I also saw a group the other day that was a year, bigger
Yes,
and stronger. I
stronger.
don't
Yeah.
know if a couple of those kids, even if called upon last year, could go and guard a few of the kids that they were guarding in the fourth
Mhm.
quarter with the game on the line. I don't know if they could have went and made a hard dribble drive, jump stop in traffic with hands slapping and so forth, and then kicking it out and making a good pass. So, um, I really could see a year's growth
Mhm.
and just the upper arms, the shoulders, the physicality, and I think that's going to not a big team, so they certainly could get challenged in the paint and at the rim, but they usually offset that with really sound dribble gap defense and not letting the ball get deep and so forth. So yeah, I think that's a team that is going to take a big step forward in the win column this year.
Yep. So now Bexley did give them, you know, an opening by, making a tough layup and then staring down a player, getting a technical. But um, Logan Elm saw that opening and just sprinted through it. Brady Neff hit the free throws, and then he hits a big jumper in that last minute. Then they put the game away at the end of the game.
Yeah,
So,
and John, that's a great point on a preview show too, of where you always hear my saying is compose and compete. The kid from the Bexley, made a nice move, and
mm,
and he certainly did what the officials said. Now, a lot of people would argue that you'll watch basketball weekend like we have, and you may see that 5, 6, 7 times not called,
mm,
but it was there.
yeah,
And so it's one of those things where you just have to be aware of it. We watched some other technicals throughout the weekend that played a key role as well. But that's part of the maturity too of,
hmm
of when you talk about going to another level. You're going to another level, you're going to put yourself in more of these tight situations. Are you able to handle it emotionally
right.
as well as the basketball part of it?
Yeah, and then just kind of looking at Amanda, we saw them the other day. They probably is going to be a tough season for them because they're dealing with a lot of injuries. But I liked the competitiveness that they put out there, and a lot of juniors on that team. So it's going to be a lot of underclassmen competing for them.
Yeah, didn't doubt their effort at all. I thought they played really hard, down a couple starters, including their point guard, it looks like, for the year. So that's unfortunate. So as a result, you're going to get some young kids. Corn at the point there. Holland was a nice player. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of guys. Stevens is a freshman,
Mhm.
got to start. Looks
Yeah.
like he's going to, get a chance in his rookie season. So you hope you come out the other side of this better prepared to get some guys back and move forward. But man, I've been there before, and that's a tough spot when you go all summer thinking you've got this team, and then all of a sudden now you have this team.
Mm. Yeah, so gonna be a no night off in the Mid-State League, as it has been for a long time. So
Mhm.
now we're gonna go from kind of the top of our coverage area to the bottom. Yeah, the technical of the bottom because South Point is the southernmost point in the state. So we're gonna jump into the Ohio Valley Conference. Led last year by Fairland. They go 14-0, held off Chesapeake with a couple really good games last year, including a double overtime game, which was one of our, I think it might have been our most viewed stream of the regular season last year was Fairland at Chesapeake. Just a dynamite game. Obviously, Brody Buchanan, led that team a year ago, all
Mhm.
Ohioan once again. They do return some really talented players, Trevor Locko, Cliff Franson, and then, man, Gerald Love, that dude will just he's in range once he gets across half court.
Hey, listen, I if you know me, I love me some three ball,
Yeah.
right? So I'm rarely going to hate a good look at the 3-point line, but what that young man does for Laco and Francis is he spaces the floor.
Yes.
So now all of a sudden, when you're able to put that level of 3 point share, I think he knocked down 5 of them the other
Mhm.
night in our game. You got to start to make a choice. And now you're going to start to play these other guys one on one, and they showed the ability to get wherever they wanted against
Mhm.
some really really good athletes for Zane
Mhm.
Trace. I think they got a chance to be really good. Now they're going to have to shore up some things on the defensive side, especially when they're forced to get 6, 7 deep into their bench. But they certainly have plenty there on the offensive end to be every bit as competitive as they've been in years past.
Yeah, 100% agree. Now they're a team that, and that they were one of the ones where we would watch some of the JV stuff before, and it was like, man, this could be rough. But I think Coach Scott Thomas comes in and he's putting together a strategy to where it can take advantage of the fact they're athletic. So, as you mentioned, if they can get out and guard, they get some shot selection tightened up a little bit, and then you got a kid like Love that can stretch the floor. That's going to make them a really hard team to guard. They're going to be really athletic, and it's Fairland. They know how to win.
Mhm.
Coach Nathan Speed put together an outstanding program for them for a long time. Coach Thomas was on that staff for a long time, and it's a group that should be really fun to watch. At the very least, they're going to be fun to watch. But yeah, that was an outstanding win for them to start the year over a really good St. Trace team.
Another theme as we do these preview shows, girls last week, boys this week, is that point guard position. You heard about my setter bias in volleyball. I've got that point guard bias. It's just kind of, playing the position. I always kind of look through that position and see it. There's a lot of guys. Laco comes to mind for
Mhm,
Fairland, who is asked to do a lot of ball handling while still scoring the basketball. It's kind of the modern day point guard position
mhm,
that's really changed over the last 20 years, where it's not enough just to be a floor general. We need you to sometimes score 15 to 20 as well. Where Fairland could really use a role player step forward somewhere this year that would give, like I was talking about with Chillicothe, was
mhm,
someone step forward that could give them 8 to 10 minutes of just some ball handling
mhm,
to allow some of those guys to free up off the ball. And I think it would keep them a little say fresh into the second half, and it would make teams have to honor more things on the court than just being able to load up on him as he comes down the
mhm.
court.
Yeah, they're going to be a fun team to watch for
Mhm.
sure. So, but I think if you look at who they were able to knock off twice last year, I think that's where you're going to look at for the top of the OVC this year, as Chesapeake's loaded. I mean, they went 23-4 last year. They lose to Minford in the regional championship
Mhm.
game a season ago, which is our most viewed live stream ever.
Yeah,
So,
that was so much fun doing
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So, you're welcome. Yeah, because I had told my mom like, "Hey, let's not schedule this thing for this Sunday because we might have something." Oh, it looks like it's gonna be okay. Nope.
No.
And I was like, "Oh." we got Shayne, so Shayne will do a good job. So you and Dewey did a great job of calling that game. So, but man, Maddox Cuzzy's one of the top players in the whole Southeast. Only a junior this year. He was third team All Ohio last year,
Yeah.
averaged over 18 points a game. Then you got Caden Perkins back as a senior, averaged 15 a game last season. Toss in Phil Thacker. Maybe the most improved player in the Southeast last year was Carson Frecka. He did a great job for them last year. The big lefty on the inside, back to the basket kid. It's going to be a really tough matchup for them. That's a really dynamic team. I think they're a favorite to get to the Final Four in the Division Five this season.
I think that's fair. And again, you go back to last year and the results are what they are. So the expectation comes off of those results, right? You start knocking on the door last year and obviously you run in and get beat by a phenomenal team and that's just kind of the next step. Fair or not, that's the bullseye you start to wear. But when you rattle off of the weapons that they have there, I could certainly see why they wouldn't run away from those. They would run right at them and accept them.
Yeah, so we'll get Chesapeake a few times on the stream so
Good,
this season.
good.
So should be fun to watch them, especially throughout the year, to see their growth because they're a team like that Minford team where I think the expectations are there. So, as you said, do you meet those expectations head on? And if you do so, then that's going to be Coach Ader, maybe his best team he's had, and he's had some outstanding teams
I was
after.
gonna say that's
Yeah,
saying something too.
yeah.
Yeah.
When you coach some really talented teams at South Webster and Wheelersburg, and then you go to Chesapeake and you find maybe your best team,
Mhm.
that's pretty good. So, uh, but they're not the only ones in the area in the OVC. Ironton, man, they just looking at the roster that they have on Max Preps at this time is just athletes. And maybe the best one out of there is Ashton Lane. And if you haven't seen him, I think a player comp for him, and maybe tell me if I'm wrong, would be Zane Trace and Gunnar McCullough. Because I feel like about similar size, not like a huge interior player, but the motor just never stops competing. And because of that, it makes them someone you have to account for at all times because if you don't, they're going to get the offense rebound. They're going to score it. Maybe he's got a better leaping ability than McCullough, but man, overall, it's just one of those players inside that you would love to have on your team.
Yeah, I think that's a great comparison. You're right about the motor. The hardest thing to play against is the kid that just doesn't quit. You know what I mean? It's the rebounder that's just relentless on every single shot. So you lose your defensive positioning. You lose sight of your man for just a half a second, and you're in trouble
Mhm.
because you know they're going to the glass, and you know they're going to be a bear to keep off the glass. So yeah, I like that comparison and size, athleticism, certainly the motor. That's good.
Yeah, they won 15 games a season ago. They're gonna have some really talented athletes, and maybe maybe there's a slight benefit to not having the extended playoffs this year, as everything that happened for them at the end of football season. But gonna be a little healthier going into the season. So you've got some really talented kids coming back. You lose Braden Shrek, but some really
Speaking
nice
of
kids.
Zane, that's who knocked them out down there in
Yes,
an incredible game. I had a chance to be a
yes.
part of down there at Waverly last
Mhm.
year. So that that's that's an Ironton team I would think comes in pretty hungry.
Yeah, so look for them. They could be uh, in that. Maybe they're going to challenge Chesapeake at times as well. So I think Ironton's one to keep an eye on. And then you mentioned point guard play, and this is something I wanted to shout out. I don't know how good their teams are going to be, but Guy Academy, Ty Reed had a really nice year last year as a freshman point guard, and then Portsmouth, Connie Hawkins seemingly is back healthy for them. Man, those are two really good point guards. They're gonna have young teams, so you're gonna see those teams mature throughout the year, and it's gonna be a big part because of those point guards.
Well, the point guard just gives you such a chance to be steady and compete at a high level because there's no quicker way to take yourself out of a game than live ball turnovers.
Mhm.
You start turning the ball over up top and the live ball turnover and you have Caden Cox's of the world,
Yeah.
dunking it on the other end, and it's it's the fastest way to get outscored 8-2, 10-4, 12-4. And sometimes when you're not as talented offensively, you don't want to say that's the ball game, but man, you're fighting such an uphill
Mhm,
battle in the second quarter. All of a sudden, you're down four in the second quarter, and then a team outscores you 12-4, and it goes to double
mhm.
digits. Well, now you may not have enough over the next half to come back from that. So the point guard just allows you to study up, understand what tempo the coach wants to be played. And throughout the course of four quarters, they'll learn to get their own shot and create shots for others.
Yeah, so that's gonna make, I know Portsmouth got a season opening win. They beat, um, Minford on Saturday night, 49-41. They're gonna play a lot of young kids, so
Mhm.
keep an eye out on Portsmouth throughout the season. I know we're gonna try to get them, at some point as well, so, and Guy Academy, appears to be a very young team as well. So look for them to continue to grow throughout the season. So that'll be all for our OVC. Now we're going to go out west to the Shack. So the Shack one, which is the big division, they had some movement in division. So Peebles goes from the big division to the small division. Ripley, believe it or not, jumps to the top division this season. You're welcome for that. Did you even catch it? I'm gonna say not. So, yeah, I'm big Ripley's fan. So,
Okay.
yeah. So last year, North Adams wins their second consecutive gold ball. I don't know if they do the gold ball down in the Shack, but the undefeated regular
Mhm.
season in the Shack, 13-0, once again won their third straight district championship. However, they graduate five starters from a season ago. And really, Carson Davis was a freshman last year. He was the one who got probably the most playing time out of the returners. So, you know, you would think it's going to be a big time uphill climb for North Adams. But the positive, those kids have won a lot. These kids that are coming in, they've won in different sports. They've won so at the lower levels. A lot of them were part of that Elite Eight team in soccer. So, I mean, you've got some really talented kids coming in that have had success in different sports. So, Carson Davis, I would think, is probably going to be the go to guy for them. But Jesse Kennedy, Thad Moore got some time last year as well. And then you've got just a lot of talented kids who have done a lot of winning.
We talked about the culture at the beginning of the show. I
Hmm.
mean, this is an example of that. The expectation when you put that uniform on is to win basketball games, and those kids have grown up in it. As you said, they've done some winning in other sports. So, ready or not, I can promise you they're going to enter the season thinking they're supposed to,
Yeah.
and you're going to have to go toe to toe with them and prove them wrong.
Yes, 100%. So moving down to Eastern Brown, went 18-5 last season. They do lose Grady Barber.
Yeah.
He transfers to Williamsburg. That's a very sizable loss because of everything that went through him. So a lot of their stuff, a lot of their actions went through him. He started off their offense a lot of times, and it is a big loss. He's a very talented player. So the good thing for the Warriors is they're built for success. Junior point guard Chase Pinkerton, outstanding player. You could tell he just grew last year as a sophomore throughout the year. And then Braxton Vance, both of them were starters a year ago. Vance is a very efficient player around the basket. But you also have some kids that made some big impacts for them. Kane Dotson, Jaden Florence, Carter Cluxton. Carter Cluxton is another one of those motor type kids where he's just going to play so hard at all times. When we had them on the streams last year, he was just dynamite for them, just effort wise. And then I want to make sure I get the name right, so I'm going to look it up as well. So they've got some really good length. They've won a lot at the lower levels as well. And of course, the updated roster not on there. I know he was on it last year. Matthew Dick was 6'5", gives some really good length inside. So he's going to give them another back to the basket type of guy to go along with Cluxton inside, Vance inside as well. So I think they're a team to keep an eye on in the Shack.
Yeah, no question. It's so well coached, first of all.
Yeah.
And then you talk again about expectation. The one thing that jumps out at you about the Shack, is the depth of that league. You know, you look at their overall records a year ago, and you got a lot of winning going on in the non-league. So
Mhm,
throughout the Southeast District, you know, you might say scheduling this, scheduling that. Well, usually schedules over the course of, 5, 10, 15 years, about the same people.
mhm,
And they just seem to be winning a lot. So it doesn't matter if they're the top teams in their league or the bottom teams in their league. I'm noticing 5, 6, 7 non-league wins
mhm.
across the board in that conference, which tells you something about the depth. So those teams at the top, to be there at the top, that gives you an idea just how complete those programs have been over the years.
Yeah, so just looking at the top right now from last year, you get 7, 8, 6 in the non-league, 5 in the non-league for West Union, who only won 6 games
Yeah,
total. So, I mean,
yeah.
you're getting a lot of wins from those other teams, and, I mean, Manchester won 8 non-league, Fayetteville 7,
Right.
7 for Fairfield, and that's just, that's showing the depth of that league and what they can do in that non-league as
Mhm.
well, has been very impressive. And then the last team I wanted to, point out in the Shack 1 is Lynchburg Clay. It's been a while since they've been at the top of the Shack, and man, they've got the horse, pun intended a little bit as the Mustangs, to do so with Denver Clinton.
Yeah.
16 points a game last year as a junior, game high of 29. This cat can do a little bit of everything. He's got some really good length. He's not a lot of size as in like bulkiness wise, but he's got some length. I believe he's listed at 6'4". Can go inside out. He can score at all three levels. It's just a really dynamic player for them if he can stay healthy throughout the year because he's missed a couple games the last couple of years. Um, if he can stay healthy, he's going to be a catalyst for them to maybe get back to the top of the shack because he's outstanding. Trevor Niehaus, Elam Faust, a couple more really good athletic returners for them. I think Niehaus was like 10 points a game last year. Faust was about 8 points a game last season. And then they had a really talented JV team as well.
Well, when you talk about House and Niehaus, the thing that jumps out at me there is when you're playing with a big time player, like Clinton, that can go, he's
Mm,
averaging 16 a year ago. You look for that number to maybe climb to closer to 20
mm,
this year. It makes the game easier for everybody to play. So
mm,
now some of these guys that are a year bigger, faster, stronger, their skill sets developed a little bit. They get another year of varsity under the belt. They start to see the game slow down a little bit. Don't be surprised if all of a sudden you start to take Clinton away one night if you don't see one of those two start to give the
mm.
ability, maybe not to average it, but the ability to go get you 15 to 20 on a given night. So um, I like, yeah, I mean, what, 500 in the league a year ago? Part of it is you got to be able to eliminate the bottom half of the league and then start to stick your nose into the top half. Let's keep an eye on them early and see if they can't get a signature win that could really give them a lot of confidence.
Yeah, in one of the games last year, Niehaus had 24 in a 1-point win over White Oak early in the season,
Mhm.
and then 19 late in the season. So, I mean, to me, that shows he's got the ability to do it.
Yes.
And they had a lot of tight games last year as well. They lose to West by 4 in the tournament. They lose by 6 to Eastern, or not Eastern, but Washington Courthouse. Lose a 4-point game to Westfall. They were tight. Lose a 4-point game at Greenfield. They were in a lot of games and then ultimately just weren't able to get them. But
Yeah.
when you return a lot of those guys,
Yes.
maybe you can take that next step and get over that hump.
And this just isn't a Lynchburg thing, it's an everybody thing. Sometimes it's not the ability to score, it's the inability to get a stop.
Mhm,
It's the inability to wrap it up with a clutch defensive rebound at winning time. And that's the difference between winning a game by 2 or 3 or losing it by 2 or 3, just able to do some of those toughness winning
mm.
things that can kind of come into your second and third year of varsity. So that's something to really, really pay attention to is Lynchburg come winning time. What kind of year's growth do we see from last year's team to this year's team?
Yeah, so look for them to I would guess they're gonna take a step forward, and this would be a perfect year to do so. So, moving on to the Shack 2, so
Mhm.
the small division per se, which has been highlighted by Fairfield. The last 2 years, they've won the Shack 2. The year before, they won the Shack 1. They returned 3 starters from a team that went 18-7. It looked like it was gonna be 4, now it ends up being 3 starters from a team ago. Logan McIntosh lost to graduation, he was outstanding last year,
Mhm.
14 points a game, and did a little bit of everything. He was kind of one of their go-to guys down the stretch. He's at Wilmington now,
Mm.
um, you know, playing Wilmington College. So he's graduated and moved on. They reached the district finals once again last year, but they returned scoring leader Brody Smith, who, when we had them against Lynchburg to start the year last year, dude made everything. Like,
Mhm.
the only thing he shot poorly in that game was free throws because he shot well from the 3-point line. He shot well from the mid range, but
Mhm.
16.4 points a game last year, only a junior this year. Also, Griffin Friend running the point for them, averaged 11 points a game last year. And then Quentin McIntosh is a really solid 5. So that gives them a really nice, solid group to start with. But is the depth there for them to get a 4-peat?
Well, again, you talked about having the 1-2 punch. 2 guys, I always feel like 30 is about the magic number. You got a
Mm,
couple guys that can go get you 30, then it's a lot easier to fill in some of the other scoring around. Um, the point guard play, the experience at that position is going to be good. I like their defensive effort. I think they're a good quarter court defensive team.
mhm,
I agree with you on the effort. It's a team that probably wouldn't hate the idea of picking up the tempo just a little bit and
mhm,
playing in space, but let's face it, sometimes you do that, lead to a little bit more foul trouble, a little bit more things. So that's probably my top of my notes for them is finding their identity as
mhm.
they graduate just a little bit, not a lot, but just enough to maybe test a little bit of who they want to be and can they find that happy medium in terms of tempo that they want to play early in the year?
Yeah, and I know a couple years ago they played really fast.
Yeah.
Last year it seemed like slowed it down just a hair.
Seem to be a little bit more comfortable
Yeah.
executing in the quarter court.
Yeah, so I mean, and last year, Brody Smith hit 69 threes on the year, shoots 45% from 3.
Let it fly. You
So,
know, I love me some three ball. I
yeah,
said it earlier.
and where what Logan McIntosh could do was
Yeah.
he really could beat guys off the dribble, he could do it inside also. But I think that opened up Smith a little bit. Now he's
Yeah.
going to be absolutely at the top of the scouting report. So his adjustment for that is going to be vital for them. I mean, even in playing the better teams that they played last year in the regular season, like in a game, you lose a tight game at Uniota, Brody Smith scores 18.
Yeah.
They lose a tight game at North Adams, he scores 15. So I mean, he's still able to do it against the teams that maybe had a little more depth. He only scored 12 in a game against Miami Trace.
Yeah.
So
But see, I'll be
yeah,
interested. Tell me if I'm missing something here. Good score.
yeah,
I what I'm looking for in his game this year, yes, he's going to go to the top of the scouting report, but I'd like to see if he's been able to add the ability to go get his own shot inside the
mhm,
3-point line more. You know, a lot of times you catch and shoot or you get the 3-point shot because, as you said, the makeup of last year's team. This year's opportunity might be for, okay, the 3 ball might come down just a little bit, but can you add a little bit more 2-point scoring? And then does the assist total come up because of
right,
how much more attention you're gonna draw? Can you make one of those, needed 3rd scores that much better?
right, yeah. So can like a Caleb Rice step in and hit some shots
That's it.
for them
That's it.
where
And can you help him get those shots?
yes. So ultimately that'll probably be the difference for Coach Williams and Fairfield, and if they can stay atop of the Shack too, because they've got a new friend in the Shack too, which would be the People's Indians. Only went 11-13 last year, but they reached the district championship game. They seemingly were playing very well late in the season,
Yeah.
and you know Josh McClary, Paxton Ryan, Bo Johnson all averaged over 7 points a game last year, a really solid group coming back from a year ago. Um, it's just, they've got a lot of depth, a lot of athleticism, really well coached as well. I mean, one of the things about the Shack, if you don't, even if you don't say someone's well coached, they're well coached because
I know.
sometimes it just you just don't say it. But Coach Airy has done a great job for them for a long time over there.
He has, and I don't mean to change the subject because I
Yeah.
watched Peebles late in the year, and I agree with everything you just said. I think they're primed, especially with the schedule change, to take a giant step forward. But the Shack in general, high level soccer, they do a
Mhm.
lot of different things, but without the football, let's face it, I never felt comfortable scrimmaging or playing a Shack
Yeah.
team early in the year because I just always felt like they were going to find the rhythm or shoot the basketball with a little bit better rhythm
Mhm.
early in the year compared to most teams. Have you always felt that
Yes,
way?
100%. Yeah, they're not a fun team to scrimmage against because then it almost makes you feel like, "Oh,
Yeah.
we're not even close to being ready."
Yeah.
And typically, they're one step further along
Yeah.
than you are. So, the rest of I think Peebles is one to really keep an eye on in the Shack too, just because athletically, they are gonna be, they're almost all like 6 foot, 6'1"
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah.
above. They all can athletically go get it. Some of them can play above the rim, but they also have some shooters as well. Um, you know, I almost said Bo Jackson, but Bo Johnson, really good shooter overall for them.
Yeah.
And, they've got a variety of guys that can beat you off the dribble and they can space the floor, which makes them a really tough matchup.
Well, and again, if you move the divisions, the matchups down the line, your number two, your number three, your number four, your number five, just are going to match up better. It's just
Mhm.
they just are. You know, what I mean, it's not to say there's not good teams. It's just the depth of roster is going to be a little bit different there, and I think that's going to be a real big X factor for Peoples, and they're going to feel that difference this year.
Yeah, and Grady Keekley played really well down the stretch last year. Only averaged 5 points a game, but in the tournament, he goes out, he scores 6, 13, 10, and just does a really good job for them. I mean, that's a way you can take a step forward as you get a little bit older. McClary came off the bench for them a lot last year, but man, that's a group that's a really talented group. And then if you look at different teams in the Shack 2. White Oak, I don't know if they have the depth, but you got a Sawyer Blair that averaged 12 points a game last season coming back. Brady,
Brandenburg back as well.
I
They have
believe
two
so.
guys that
Yeah.
average 12. So I mean,
Yep.
there's that 1-2 punch. There's a North Adams guy, right? Coach Copas, Corey Copas
Yep.
took that job.
Yep. And then you got a Jonah Michael who's a good athlete as well. So I mean, you've got some pieces
Hmm.
there. Maybe the depth isn't there. Parker Hayslip had a really nice season last year for Manchester.
Yep.
Um, we had him on a live stream early in the year. They get to the district final last year, and a lot of it was because of what Hayslip could do. So they end up going 13-12. And I think when me and Dewey were doing uh, our pick 'em type of thing. We just were not convinced by Southern at all because we did like pick by pick, and we weren't convinced by Southern, and we both just picked a random. Like I think he picked South Gallia to make it to the district final. I picked Manchester, and ultimately I won our pick because of I picked the right team in that. So
Hmm.
which was Manchester last year, but
Well, again, they only
yeah,
lost 4 times outside of conference, right? So
right,
I mean,
yeah.
again, these Southern Hills teams getting into the postseason, if they avoid each other, they're going to be a tough out because again, the data tells you that outside of conference, their conference stacks up just fine.
Yeah, Elijah Crabtree averaged 8.5 points a game last year. He's back as well. He had 20 in their upset over Southern.
Hmm.
Hayslip had 21. He averaged 13.5 points a game, 4 assists, 4 rebounds, 2 steals, half a block. Um, just does a little bit of everything for them. In that Piketon game that we had on the live stream last year, he had 21 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds. Let me find the steals. 8 steals in
Hmm.
that game, and it was like just a tour de force of like this dude was all over the place. So I mean, they're a team to especially at home that you're gonna have to be mindful of. Um, Fayetteville's another one. They win 16 games a season ago. Um, what do they? They're obviously going to be well coached. Joby Stewart's won
Hmm.
heck of a lot of games for them. Charlie Kaufman averaged 14.3 points a game last year for
Hmm.
them. He's back as a junior. Jack South 9 points a game last year for them as well. So I mean they've got some pieces. Um, they're going to be an interesting one. Brody Feldhouse 6'8". Have fun with that in that league because
Hmm.
there's not a ton of size.
Hmm.
So I mean, they're going to be an interesting matchup. Now they did uh, kind of an eye-opening loss to start the year with East Clinton.
caught
but
my attention because
uh,
I watched Fayetteville in the
yeah.
preseason on film, and I like their pieces. I do. I think they're going to be a good team. That score did catch
Mhm.
my eye. I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about East Clinton or where they're at or whatnot, but I still think Fayetteville coming off of that many wins a year ago and having some guys back and that coaching staff, they're still going to be quite a factor.
Well, late in the year, they beat East Clinton by 33 last season. Now I know East Clinton had a player who played a little bit at Hillsborough last year, moved back,
That's right.
so that's gonna
That's
make
right.
an impact, but
He's a good player.
that is a massive impact to,
Yeah.
a 40-point swing in that, so
Right.
that might be
Right.
something to keep our eyes on that, so, I mean, for me, that was kind of eye-opening,
Hmm.
but I still believe in this Fayetteville team as
I agree.
well. So,
Yeah.
Shack basketball should be really fun. I know we're gonna get down to get some Shaction over there early in the year. I think it's, Fairfield at Eastern Brown, so that's gonna be not this week, but next week. Obviously, you can see our streaming games
Yeah.
down below. So look for some really good action out of the Shack coming up this season. So we're going to move over to the SOC. We'll start in the bottom, not the bottom, but the lowest division with the SOC one. Last year, Notre Dame goes 10-0. They were a shot short from the Final Four, losing by 2 to South Webster. They had possession, didn't get a shot off, unfortunately, in the final seconds in the regional final. Played an outstanding game there, a great tournament run. Graduate a really talented group, but Zonberger and Garrett Barbarous are back, and the Titans want to get back to the top of the SOC.
Yeah, that was an impressive run. I was telling you off the air, I knew they were good, but I didn't quite realize that overall record until I
Hmm.
started studying up on them a little bit. That that conference is interesting. I know you're going to get
Hmm.
to it here. There's some unbelievable individual
Yes.
talent, some kids that can really score the basketball.
Hmm.
Um, we joked a little bit in the SOC at football about playing defense with eight. Yeah,
Hmm.
there's going to be times where we're probably going to pick up the notes from a game and be like, goodness, who's guarding this guy? I mean, that type of thing, because there's some kids that can really score. And it's
Hmm.
going to make for some interesting matchups in that league.
Oh yeah, 100%. So before we get to that, Ironton St. Joe tied with Green last year for second. Don't have a whole lot of information on them. And then Coach Larry Howell went from the West girls to the Clay boys. So even if that doesn't turn around quickly, just from watching what he was able to do at West, he can really coach. So I
Yeah.
think that's going to be a program to keep our eye on in the future, because that could help elevate that program in a big way, where they've had a lot of down years, but that's a really fun program.
The basketball's worked there plenty. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it tells you that if you get the right person in there and they're patient with them and everybody gets pulling the rope in the same direction, that it can work there.
Yes, 100%. And then when we look at some individuals, Green, Jonathan Knapp scored his 1,000th career point last year. I think he ended up on 1,000. You hear the Knapp name down at Green, you know that's going to be a really talented
Yeah.
player and athlete. He's an outstanding athlete,
Mhm.
multiple sports. Second team All Ohio last year, averaged 21 points a game. I think the Bobcats have a sneaky chance to make a run. Possibly to get to the top of that, but also in the postseason as well. Because when you've got a standout like Knapp, you've got a chance in those lower divisions.
Agree, and it kind of goes back to the theme of the league. And I know you're going to talk about even another
Yeah.
one, but there's just seems like there's some individuals throughout that league that on a given night, if you don't have your scouting report and your kids ready to go and locked in to guard, someone's about ready to drop 30 or 40 on.
Yep. And right in that mid mark was New Boston's Wyatt McNeil. He had 35
Wow,
in their season opening win over River Valley, a 76-74 win. He was honorable mention All Ohio last season, averaged 18 points a game as a junior. He hit 6 threes in that game.
much bigger school, tight game, needed
Yeah.
all of them. So it wasn't like one of those where you just kind of added on late. You needed them all, and I'm gonna talk about that in the TVC. I feel like River Valley take a step forward this year,
Mm.
and I think that was an example of where you get a young man get it going one night, and you can compete with anyone for 32 minutes.
Right, and then that's a program. Just a few years ago, they were in the Final Four. So I
Yep.
mean, you've got it. The same coach, Coach Cox, does a really good job down there, and they're going to play a fun style. they're going to be a tough matchup because anytime McNeil gets across half court, he's going to be in range, and ultimately that's going to make New Boston
Yeah.
probably a must see type of team on the schedule. I saw them last year at Huntington, and I was like, man, they got some dudes.
Yeah.
Like, they not a lot of depth, but they had some dudes, and McNeil was one of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, 35 in their season opener, just an outstanding game, a great win for New Boston to start. So, hopefully we'll hear and see more on the SOC one throughout the season. But now we're going to jump to the middle
Mhm.
of the SOC with the SOC two. Last season, Eastern Pike wins the league 9-1. They lose to Northwest about midway through the year, but they end up winning 23 games overall, and they reach the Elite Eight before losing to the state champions in Monroe Central in the Elite Eight. You graduate, Tucker Lice, just an outstanding guy who just go get it whenever. And that was he might have been one of those like just when he's on fire, he's just on fire. Because I know there's a couple of games that we did where he was just you'd be like, maybe not the that went in. It's like maybe not the best shot. Like
Yeah.
in that Sims Valley game we did, unreal. Once he got across the midcourt, he was just locked in, and that was he probably heard the noise of you know, since Valley's Ethan Smith, we'll talk about in a second too, but probably heard the noise about Ethan Smith and that one was like, I'm just going to take over, and he was able to do so. So Tucker Lice was one of the more fun players to watch last season, but they returned Boston Webb, Aiden Warner, Cade Lice, some really good, outstanding players for the Eagles. They look to repeat as SOC2 champions. A really well coached group, and they're a team. They've won a lot of games and a lot of different things. I mean, a lot of these guys are football guys too. So Boston Webb broke a state record for touchdown receptions in a game,
Yeah.
and Cade Lice is a big part of that team as well. So I
Right.
mean, it's just you've got a lot of winners.
Winning.
Yeah,
Yep.
winning. So they're going to be a tough team to match up with in that SOC too.
I agree. I mean, certainly they earn the right to wear the bullseye as the favorite. I think as you go down through the league, I would summarize the rest of this league as improved.
Yes.
I think it's going to be a little bit more depth to it. I still think Eastern's the standard,
Hmm.
the top. But as I start to look down through some of these rosters, I'm like, well, that team could be a little bit more athletic. This team now, a couple teams did graduate some scoring, which could certainly impact, especially at the level Eastern and even a Sims Valley can
Yeah.
score it at. But I do think there's some depth of athleticism on some of these teams down at the bottom.
Yeah, and when you talk about graduated scoring, Sins Valley
Yep.
graduated Ethan Smith, 23.5 points a game last
Yep.
season. He was all Ohio. I mean, he had, I believe he put up 50 in a game last season, and just, he could really go get a basket whenever you need it. And that's one of the reasons why, the Vikings had as good of a season as they did. Now they were upset early in the tournament by Huntington,
Yep.
which is why one of the reasons why we're pretty high on Huntington was what
Yep.
they were able to do late in the season. But Sims Valley returned some really talented players. Had some of these kids had really good seasons in football, which
Mhm.
we talk about them a lot on overtime. But Bronx Carpenter, Asher Maynard, both were freshmen last year. Combined to average over 17 points a game for them. Carpenter was in double figures. Maynard could really go get it
Yeah.
at times. And then you have Tanner Corn, Grady Holland, and you can see a really fun winner in Willowwood.
Well, with Carpenter and Maynard, that's why I said I knew that Sims Valley graduated the points they did, but I think it's something they'll be able to replace.
Hmm.
And then, as you mentioned, can some of the depth of athleticism start to fill in some of those roles defensively on the glass and so forth? Um, is it enough to run down Eastern? I don't know. I certainly think it's enough to separate themselves from the rest of that league, which could allow them to still play toward the top of the standings.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, before we get into a couple really good individuals, look at Northwest. Really nice nucleus from last year. They went 11-12. They had a little bit of a drop off late in the season, but man, they've got some unbelievable size,
Yeah.
especially for that conference. And then some really good athletes as well that we've talked about with that really successful football season for Northwest.
Here's what I have in my Northwest notes. Tell me I'm wrong. because again, someone will step up as the go-to guy.
Mm,
But I see some nice athleticism. I see some pieces there that's going to allow them to compete and guard
yeah,
with some of these great scorers. Who's going to score the basketball for them? That's
right.
what worries me is because even when you start running into some of these scores, getting them under
Mhm.
control one night means that they might get 16. You know what I mean? So like, can Northwest score enough to stay in some of these games into the third or fourth quarter? Is that fair?
Yes, I completely agree because that was, in the game we did for them last year, that was kinda scoring was one of the issues that we saw from them. Now they're, once again, another well-coached team. They've
Yep.
got
Yep.
great community support,
Yes.
and,
Yes.
so home court's gonna be a big advantage for them, but on the road, whenever you need to get a bucket, who's gonna be that guy to go get the bucket for you?
Yeah. Because it's one thing to execute and run your set, and it's another guy just to have a guy that can go get you. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And like that always makes you a better coach.
Yes,
We're-
100%.
we've said the term well coached here a lot of times. Let's not kid ourselves. Having a guy that goes gets 25 every night makes you a better coach.
Yeah, I had my last year of coaching, I had a kid that was, once he got to the volleyball line, he was open.
Yeah.
And, I had a coach who, like, looked at me, he was like, I was like, "I don't know, he hit, like, 6 straight threes,
Yeah.
that's I
All of
that
a
ain't."
sudden, you're a better offensive
Yeah,
coach
like,
every
I
night.
look like a great offensive coach. It's like, well, he's like, "Yeah, you run your stuff, and
Yeah.
once he's at the volleyball line,
Yeah.
hey, you get your feet set, let it fly." And
Yeah.
yeah, so, speaking of once you get your feet set, let it fly, South Gaius, Carson Stowers last
Yeah.
year, honorable mention All-Ohio as a freshman, averaged 14 points a game. He had a game with 10 threes for the Rebels. Now they went 0-10 in league play, didn't have a real successful season, but, anytime you have a sophomore that can shoot it like he can, you have a really nice building block for the next few years.
Well, you do, and you start to build around that a little bit, and you start to get some more athletes. Then what will happen is his overall game will start to evolve. And
Mhm,
I talked about it earlier. You may not be able to create as many of those same types of looks, but can you add other things to your game where you can start to create some shots for others? And man, if they could just develop into a second or third scorer, give them a little bit,
mhm.
that they again, maybe not good enough over the course of the whole year, but on a given night, they could get somebody.
Yeah, so look for them, and then speaking of that, Western lost some really talented players,
They
couple
did,
couple
yeah.
Ohioans last year, but they get a nice season opening win over, uh, Paint Valley, a 63-60 win on Saturday night. Josiah Satterfield, 17 points, 16 rebounds in the win. He also had 5 assists.
Yeah, I watched that game and give Paint Valley a lot of credit. They come from up
Yes.
14 down to tie it at 60, but give Western a lot of credit because you graduate the two players you're talking about, and sometimes you get down into the winning time and you start looking around of like, okay, who's going to take the shot?
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but they didn't panic and they still finished. So it's always better to learn from a win, right? So that
Mhm,
makes that a more comfortable film session for them to go and take a look at. Okay,
mhm,
look, we obviously played really well and built a 14-point lead. Bad news is we let it go in the course of about
mhm,
6 7 minutes. So can we learn from that and come back? But not going to be nearly as talented as in the past, but still a little bit more capable. When I watched them, I felt like still more capable
mhm.
than a lot of people were predicting in the preseason.
Yeah, I agree completely. They had some decent pieces, and, you know, if you got a guy that can go out and get you those numbers, that's
Yep.
gonna make you a lot more competitive,
Yes.
as well as you can't really, teach heart and effort in that way.
Mhm.
So, um now we will move on to the SOC 3, the big division of the SOC. Last year, Minford ran it with a trip to the Final Four for the first time in school history. However, they will graduate two unreal first team All Ohioans, Miles Montgomery, Bennett Kaiser. And then you just kind of toss in, oh, yeah, you lose starters in Jackson Shoemaker and Kate Glockner that could really play as well. And really probably had two of their better games in that state semifinal game. So, I mean, they were one of the most fun teams to cover over the last few years. Um, you know, it's going to be tough for them, probably going to be a tough season, but your return Ashton Reeder, Curtis Glenn as big contributors from a season ago. And if you saw what they did in soccer, where, they lost a lot of guys from a state runner-up team, but you're a well-coached team, you got a program ready and a good culture, and it's gonna make it to where you can be a little more competitive. Now, with how talented the SOC 3 is, it might be a tough season for them there, but I could see them having some success in the non-league.
Well, that's the thing is in the second half of the year, regardless of what you graduate, you still show up on people's schedule earlier in the year as a team that went to the Final Four last year. I mean, so you're wearing the bullseye even if you weren't the one that threw the bullseye,
Yeah.
so to speak. Um, yeah, it could be a learning curve early on. I like everything you said about culture and different things. The league is going to be a brutal test.
Mhm.
That's a hard league to grow up in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you come with a young group. But I agree with you. Let's not get too wrapped up in the results here in 2025. And when the calendar turns to 2026, let's maybe step back and reevaluate. And I think you'll like the direction this program's going
Yeah,
still.
I agree completely. Now, just pulling up their roster, I'm pretty happy to see Ty Borland's on the roster once again.
Yep.
He played some
Yep.
big minutes for them in that state run as well. So Maddox Porter comes in at 6'3", and then you got Colt Donahoe who played a good bit early in the season for them, also 6'3". So they're going to have some length as well. So
Yep.
if they can find somebody to put the ball in the basket, that's going to make them a lot more dangerous throughout the season. So excited to follow what they are able to do for them, and it's overall just a program and community that we've really enjoyed covering throughout the last few seasons. So when you move down the standings from last year, then you had South Webster, who ho hum only reached the Final Four. Outstanding season for them. They graduated a really good group led by Eli Roberts, who's at Rio Grande and starting as a true freshman for them. A really good overall senior class now. A big part for them, Bo Stevens likely is going to miss the season
Yep.
with an injury
Mm.
he had late in the summer. He really came along for them last year and was a key contributor for them. In that game at Menford that we did last year, he was fearless for them, made some big time plays for them. So that's going to be a big loss that they were expecting to have. But as we've said all throughout the year, Hunter Bernard, anytime you've got a kid like him, he's a winner. And you got Bryce McClintock. He had 30 in their season opening win over Trimble. So I mean, someone's going to pick up the slack. Looks like McClintock is saying, I'll be the one to do so.
Yeah, that number certainly jumped out at me. I had a chance to watch this group on film
Mhm.
early in the preseason here, and still really impressed with the athleticism. Still impressed with their physicality. Certainly do have some kids that can score it as that opening night
Mhm.
would showcase. Um, Probably the biggest question mark is just the league is going to get so much better top to bottom.
Mhm.
So I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. But you throw all that aside, again, I want to see where this team is come January because from the division standpoint, that's a whole different matchup
Mhm.
than what they're going to face in that SOC.
Yes. So, and then Easton Large, a 6'5" freshman, really good footwork for him. Braden Bernard is another one. Cole Bennett, some of these, Caden Johnson, some kids that have contributed and done a lot of winning in different sports as well. So, I
Yep.
mean, um, man, they can really play. I mean, they won by 36 or 34 in their season opener.
Yep.
Saw them on tape. They looked really athletic on tape. They
Yep.
had some kids that can shoot it. So I mean, don't sleep on the Jeeps at all. And got a few wins on that sideline as well. So
A couple.
yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep.
um for the rest of the league, just we'll start with Wheelersburg because it's gonna be really hard to talk about
Mhm.
anything for them as far as a preview. Braylon Rucker was honorable mention All Ohio last season. I think they're going to return a lot of guys. I would think so. How healthy are they going to be after a 15-week football season? Could be a deciding point. I think they're going to pick up the season a couple weeks from Saturday. We'll see if that gets pushed back even more because they just, you make it to the state championship game. Most of those guys are football players. McGraw's a really talented player for them as well. So I mean, they've got some really nice pieces, but I mean, really, it's unfair to do a preview for them, and I think they're okay to say, "Hey, we're probably not gonna play our best basketball until after January."
Yeah, I think so. I think yeah, it's one thing we talk about a team making the playoffs or winning a couple games. When you start getting this deep in and you're
Mhm,
getting all the way to the state championship into December, that's just a whole different level. So again, as much as we love basketball, this is one of those incredible opportunities for those football guys, and you just got to put basketball on the back burner. Now, when they pick it up because of Wheelersburg's culture, they will treat that just the same. They'll
mhm,
treat it with the same expectation. They'll expect to win. They'll expect to go out and represent their school
mhm,
the right way as they always do, and they will. But it's just going to take some time. Um, but you're right. You know, I got talking about this with some people over the holidays here on the OHSA side of things. With more and more teams making the playoffs, you know, would it make sense to go down to 9 games? Would it really be that big a financial hit? And could we start the season and get teams playing more the first Friday in August?
mhm,
Do we have to have it to where we're making it harder and harder for kids to play multiple sports?
mhm.
We keep talking about how we want kids to get out and play multiple sports, these types of things, not just making a state championship,
Yep,
but like I've even seen examples of where some kids are going to miss more and more time because of the way things are
right.
overlapping so much. So I know that's a different topic for a different podcast, but talking about Wheelersburg, I think that's a fair thing to bring up here.
I would like to see it go back down to 8 because then you're cutting an entire week off, and,
Mhm.
we would have been done a week earlier, but going into December is really difficult on these kids that this started for
What
them.
about playing the
Yeah.
first Friday night of August?
Yeah.
Like if you start practice the Monday or whatever after the July 4th
Mhm.
holiday, why couldn't we be playing the first Friday of
Right.
August?
Yeah, I mean, because 'cause you're
Most
practicing them.
most schools are going back as mid-August, as early
Right.
as they can, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because that would bring everything back a little bit earlier, and then, if you have to have that extra week, then it gives you that as well. So, I mean, it's definitely something that we can look at, as you said,
Yeah,
maybe a little later to
sure.
talk about at one of our discussion points. So,
Mhm.
I'm going to move to, I'm going to hit on Waverly last because we saw them in person.
Okay.
Um, let's jump over to West. West last year dealt with some adversity. They had Logan McIntyre had to sit the second half of the year due to transfer, but man, they go out and beat Warren, who I know has 5 new starters from a year ago,
Yeah.
but it's still Warren at Warren, win by 20. Will Kegley is outstanding for them. Logan McIntyre outstanding as well. They play a really stingy 1-3-1. They have really good length. Man, I think they're going to be a really tough team to beat on any given night, especially when you get into league play.
First of all, that's a nice little bus trip to start the year, you know what I mean? But like, no, yeah, if you haven't been to Warren, Warren's a really tough place to play. Beautiful facility down
Hmm.
there. Tough place to play, though. And there's just something about the Warren name that you throw respect at in terms of quality of basketball program. So
Hmm.
when you go down there and you do that, that certainly is going to raise some eyebrows and put some more expectation on you. So I
Hmm.
guarantee you, it caught my attention. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? The first thing I started to do was peek at their schedule a little bit and be like, oh, who they got that? You know
Oh,
what I mean?
we may have added like 2 games on
Yeah.
our. Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I don't want to overreact to the one thing, but it certainly caught my attention, and it's certainly a team that I want to evaluate a little closer than I originally maybe was going to.
Mhm. Yeah, so 28 points for Will Kegley in their opener. McIntyre had 15.
Yeah,
And then you have Braden Atkins, who had a really nice football season for them at
very nice
5.
breakout year.
Yeah,
Yep.
Christian Carrasco, Corbin Miller had some big games for them last season as well. So, I mean, keep an eye on the Senators in the
Mhm.
SOC3. Then Valley returns 4 starters from a year ago. Christian Coppin might have the best floor vision of anyone in the Southeast District. Really liked what I saw from him last season. I mean, they get to the district final last year. They were maybe a year ahead of time, but I think they're a team to keep an eye on. They had a really impressive season opening win over Piketon, just a pretty dominant win there. And I think they're a team that should be really fun to watch.
I love their unselfishness when you talk about four starters, the ability to share the ball, and you mentioned the floor vision of Coppin, and I think I think that is where they become really hard to guard. Is if the ball doesn't stick and it
Mhm.
moves, then that they present some challenge.
Yeah, and they're almost all underclassmen besides Coppin. So I mean, you got a Jalen Dunham, Jackson Bender, uh, Elliott Frank, uh, Blake Lundy was really efficient when I watched them last year. Braxton Conaway, they dealt with a lot of injuries last year as well, so they had kind of a shorter bench, so they weren't playing a whole lot of guys. But man, they've got some really nice pieces. Not as big as you typically see from a Valley team,
Mhm.
mostly 6'2" and below. To me, the biggest issue could be shooting from the outside, as it really looked like Conaway was the only one that felt comfortable with it last season. But I think they're a team to keep an eye on throughout the season. I think um, they're one of the teams that I would put near the top of the SOC 3, if not at the top. So keep an eye on the Valley Indians
Mhm.
throughout this season. And then Waverly, all five starters back from last year. They had a really nice win over Fisher Catholic in their opener. Cage Alexander opened a ton of eyes last year throughout the year, especially late in the season as he had the game winner against Jackson to get Waverly to the convo to get to a district championship game. Wasn't a great season wins and losses for them, but they got a lot of experience, a lot of talent coming back. What do you think about that
Well, I really
Waverly
like
team?
their guard play. I really like their overall athleticism, and it's just going to get even better as they get healthier.
Mhm.
So they check a lot of boxes. You know, you talk about Alexander again. I evaluate the point guard position really tough, and what I like about kids is when they add something to their game year
Mhm.
in year out. And I'll tell you what he did in their opening win that caught my attention was his ability on the defensive end. You
Yes.
know, that's something maybe a year ago I didn't see, where this year on opening night they had a young man get it going in a
Yeah.
hurry on them and was on pace to almost individually beat them. And he kind of accepted a little bit of a challenge there into the second half and kind of worked on that end.
Mhm.
And that really caught my attention. So I thought that was impressive.
Yeah, he looks like he's gotten, just I mean, as you're going to between your freshman and
Mhm.
sophomore year, but he just looks physically stronger, and that's what he
Yeah.
was be able to be physical on the defensive end. In
Yeah.
that,
Mhm.
you mentioned they're going to get healthier as Landon Russell is going to be coming back from an injury. He didn't play in that first game. Tegan Hurt, Kaiser
Yeah.
Kazi,
Really
yeah,
like Hurt and the energy he brings. And
yeah.
then obviously both Myers.
Yeah, and then Kessie had a really nice second half, especially in that game.
He
Kind of a
did.
slow
He did.
start, but I mean, he's a freshman, started his
Mhm.
first game, but then that second half, he really turned it on. And then you mentioned the Myers twins; they do a little bit of everything for you
Mhm.
without needing the ball. Now, I'm sure they would like the ball a little bit more, but
Mhm.
they don't need it. So, and because of that, it makes them invaluable to what they do because they can set screens. They can still, if they get the ball in the block, they can still score it, but they're going to crash the glass. They're going to play really good defense for you. And they're big, strong kids that can really defend.
They're going to learn a lot from last year's tournament run.
Mm,
And a lot of times with Alexander, no one doubts how talented he is at the ball. He's very skilled. Can really score it. The thing you look at is the efficiency. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Because as they all grow together, they all have the ability to do some different things, and as they're able to find some efficiency on the offensive end, they're going to be a team that gets really good really quick
Mm,
because athletically they're going to match up with most opponents on most nights.
yes. So they're going to be I would say probably a matchup nightmare for most teams
I would agree with that.
because you're going to have the two really good.
Especially now, do we know how the timeline of Russell?
I do not.
That's a big get. I
I'd
mean,
heard it
he's an
was
athletic kid.
like midway through December.
Okay.
But really their schedule's tough. Obviously, you're playing 10 games against really good teams in league
Mhm.
play, and then your non-league is tough as well. So I mean, it's going to get them more prepared throughout the season, and then ultimately they look to try to make a similar run, maybe even further this year in the postseason. But they're another one, kind of like Fairfield Union, where maybe they're a year away from that big time run, but
Yeah.
they're not playing for that this year.
Yeah.
They're playing
But
to,
the other
yeah,
thing too, you don't sneak up on people anymore. So a
right.
lot of times in that first year, you wear the glass slipper a little bit and it's fun or
Mm,
whatever. Now you come back and all of a sudden you're the team that was in the district final last year. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's a little bit of that. You don't sneak up on anybody. You got to be ready to wear that and accept that expectation.
Yes, 100%. So now we're going to jump to the Chillicothe area, Ross County area for the Scioto Valley Conference. Two schools outside of Ross County, one in Piketon, one in Williamsport with Westfall. So should be a fun year in the Scioto Valley Conference. Last year, Uniota they're coming off a district championship. They won the league going 13-1. Only early season loss at Westfall, which is it's gone back years now of Westfall kind of owning Uniota at Westfall. So uh, Sherman's winning the district championship last year, graduated three really good players from a season ago. But the good news for Coach Combs is you have district player of the year Blake Fitchback as a senior, one of the better point guards in the area. He can really score it, but he can also organize your team really well and plays a really good defense. I hope that came onto camera as well as that falling the piece of the wall falling off. But they got some really talented kids that are used to winning. You've heard their names a lot: Jack Welch, Isaac Coy, David Long, of course, Jackson Zickafoos. Some really talented kids that you're going to recognize from other sports. But also Caden Patterson coming back from an injury should have a really nice bounce back year. Good to see him back, seemingly at 100%, or at least will be there soon. And then you have Dawson Mitchell, really big, good length inside, can really impact the game.
Yeah, it's an interesting group. I think it reminds me a little bit of how this team started last year. If you turn on the film, the first 5 or 6 games of the year last year, they weren't a real good basketball team. I
Right.
mean, they were good. You know what I mean, but not nearly what they went on to be. And this year you graduate 3 starters, you lose another starter for a while with a football injury. Now it obviously helps when the one starter back is the best player in the league.
Mhm.
Um, but there is depth coming up off some JV minutes and some varsity minutes a year ago. You mentioned some really good guard play with Welch and Coy. I think that's a really nice foundation piece. There's some versatility there that you're going to see as Zikafus comes back. He's the engine that makes it go on the defensive end. But then when you look at some of the versatility, you can go big with the rim protector and Dawson Mitchell. You can use Long as a versatile
Mhm.
defender. But then I like what you said about Patterson coming off the injury. He's someone that could really stretch the floor, and and having the ability to shoot the three could really help some of those one-on-one players off the
Mhm.
dribble for Unio to have some space. So I'll be anxious to evaluate this team on the defensive end early. I think they have a couple different identities they can go. I think that's where the loss of Zikafus is going to
Yeah.
really show up early. So that's something I'm watching for early. But the good news is all signs point to him coming back sooner rather than later. And when he does, man, I'm telling you, he's a game wrecker.
Yeah.
I mean, he just he just has a way of just kind of getting out top there and just taking the other team
Mhm.
completely out of what they want to do. And um, over the last 10, 12 games of the year last year, he locked down some really good offensive players.
Yeah, he can be outstanding on the defensive end, and then anything he gives you on offense is just a big time
Mhm.
positive. And he showed at times last year he can give you a lot, but you don't always need it. So sometimes it's just one of those nice hidden weapons for
Sure.
Coach Combs.
Mhm.
So uh, Uniota should be outstanding again. Another team that I really liked what they did the other night. I know it ended up in a loss, but Zane Trace, they won 20 games a season ago. You graduate some really talented backcourt pieces as well. But you've got, the ultimate motor in Gunnar McCauley. He had 22 points, 14 rebounds, and probably tipped another 5 or 6 balls on the offensive glass the other night. Grady Stewart can do it on the outside, but he also can get to the inside a little bit. He had a nice game for them. You know those names coming back. But then Roman Berry, we talked about him in our or last week in our season opener. What he could give. Gave him 9 points the other night, but he only had one going into about the last 3 minutes. And he has 8 points in the last 3 minutes, including a big three with about a minute five left that gave them a lead after
Mhm.
they trailed most of the second half. I really liked what he could give. Lance Stevens gives them some really nice toughness on the outside as well. What can if those two can be steady for them? in the backcourt. Then you got, Kaiser, and you got some other pieces as well. Hill as well, guys that can contribute. That's going to make a big difference for them. But man, what a difference does it give when you got Bryce Johnson, Hudson Williams coming back. Watch for them throughout the year as they get their basketball legs. I mean, Hudson Williams played 8 minutes the other night, had 7 rebounds, 6 offensive rebounds. Just an insane game. Bryce Johnson gave them some outstanding minutes throughout the night. I just look for this team by late February and March. They're going to be a team you're not going to want to play because of what Stewart and McCullough can give you night in, night out, and then just athletically what those other guys can give as well.
I thought Zane Trace, as they hit the tournament trail a year ago, the biggest jump they made were in some of the physicality
Mhm,
categories. And I thought that's when they really went to the next level and turned into a 20-win team. Coming back this year, I know they graduated some different pieces, but you're right. Johnson and Williams, they just give them some physicality defensively on the glass. You already have McCall to worry about that we highlighted
mhm,
his individual talent. But what those guys do is they give you a chance to match up with different types of athletes. As they get more of the
mhm,
basketball fill in, I think they're the types of athletes that will grow into guarding, three different positions on the floor
mhm.
and being able to do some things, versatility, even if it is only for 5, 6 minutes here at a time. Um, but then I really had in my notes, so I thought Barry made a huge year's growth
Yeah.
when I watched him the other night. I mean, I can't stress enough at the point guard position. You want Stewart to only be on the point when the coach wants him on the point. You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying? When the
Yep.
play calls for him to be on the point, then fine, put the ball in one of your best players' hands and let him do what he does because he's very talented. But you want your floor general to be efficient. I thought Barry did that. He got him into what they wanted to run. He's got good rapport with his head coach because he's had that year of
Mhm,
experience now. He knows when to go. He knows when to pull back. He'll still learn. He'll still
mhm.
learn. But I also, you talk about adding something to your game. A year ago, I didn't see that ability to score 8 points in a fourth quarter.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that the other night against a really quality opponent. So I guess my point is, I already knew Stewart and McCall were really
Right.
good. I guess what I was looking for the other night was, can I see an improvement in physicality? Yes. Can I see a growth at the point guard position? Yes. And if those two things continue to be yeses, then this team becomes really, really
Mhm.
dangerous.
Yeah, I agree completely. So, look forward to seeing them. We'll see them on Tuesday night when they take on Westfall.
Yes, big game, big game.
Westfall, who they did start off 0-1, but man, you got Joe Ray, Brian Craig coming back. That's two guys that can just go get you a bucket whenever. You talked about that. Was it the 30 points you want to have between your top two guys?
Yeah.
They're going to get you closer to 40.
Well, they got 36 there in the win against
Yeah.
Amanda the other night, and Ethan Rose has had an 8 point game against Courthouse. Brock
Mm,
Williams had a 9. Just having some different guys score. But man, when you're that good at guard, you just have a chance every night. I mean, what a nightmare matchup. I mean, when they're in the right mindset, they can just live in the middle. And then when they share it,
mm,
if Westfall can find some consistency from role players knocking down the three ball, that's when they could really
mhm.
go next level. Because I'm telling you, if you haven't seen these two play off the dribble,
Yeah.
they're a nightmare. Like if you
Mm,
if you can't keep them in front, you're never going to rebound. So the
mm,
offensive rebounds with some of their athletes become factors. Again, I think the biggest thing I look for, can they find some guys that will punish defenses for trying to load the paint up against these elite
mhm,
scorers off the dribble? And if they can, I'm not sure what you do with them, but so far we talked about Courthouse earlier being
mm.
a lot better. I think that's an example of what we're talking about. And then Westfall comes back and gets the 54-41 win against the Amanda there.
Mhm. Yeah, so, we're looking forward to getting that game on Tuesday, Westfall at St. Trace, and we're also gonna get Westfall on Saturday, Megs at Westfall.
Great game.
We'll talk about Megs coming up shortly. So, Huntington, another one, 2-0 start for the Huntsmen. Frankie Hirsch, like, it just dude can do whatever on the court. He's outstanding. Then you got Calvin Manson, Calvin Hirsch on the inside. They're not going to be very deep on the year. Brennan Smith gives them some good minutes as well at the point guard spot. So and then Zane Baker, another one. Not a ton of depth for them, but they're a team that if they can stay out of foul trouble, they're going to be a really tough matchup.
Well, no question how good Hirsch is, but I want to talk again about point guard play.
Mhm.
Surprise, surprise. So, but the point guard here again, here's growth. Smith was really good the
Yeah.
other night. I know he had trouble finishing a little bit in the open court, and you were making some different jokes about that and so forth. But
But I mean, really, that's one of those things where, like,
yeah,
when the first one doesn't go in, it gets a lot
yeah.
harder. It's kinda like putting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but again, I don't even care about that. Like
Yeah.
I'm just saying from the ability from the tip to control the tempo, to handle the ball cleanly, know when to try to score it, know when to try to share it. I just thought he did a really, really good job. And if he's handling the ball, I've always felt like, tell me if you disagree, I've always felt like it's easier to bring other young guys along when they don't have to just be thrown to the wolves. I see all these young kids in girls basketball and boys, again, because of the little league culture, and we don't play freshman ball as much in boys. We don't hardly have JV anymore, girls. So therefore, we put these kids, we just throw them to the wolves at the varsity level and say,
Mhm.
here, handle the ball. Well, it's easier for a Baker. It's easier for a younger Hirsch to develop because they can come up and play in their comfortable environment,
Mhm.
right? Smith's going to handle the ball. Hirsch is going to handle the ball. And I know Huntington appears to only be six deep. I know they spotted the seventh and
Yeah.
contender, but like in watching them, John, I felt like there was such a versatility. It felt
Mhm.
like you're coaching with more 8 or 9
Right.
because again, they're so interchangeable. Even Manson's got a lot of versatility in the way he can
Mhm.
handle it in the open court. So I really like this team. I think they have some length to them, some athleticism. Um, let's
Yeah.
just wait and see. I just everything I watched them second half of last year, I felt like they're trending in the right direction. They come back this year, a nice start there with a couple wins, and let's just watch as they get in SVC play. I think they're dangerous.
Yeah, I do too. I agree completely. So, a team that I think kinda surprised all of us, you know, maybe we should have known because what he was able to do coaching on the girls' side, but Coach Andrew Day taking over at Adina, I thought they looked just night and day, kind of pun intended there too, an improvement there.
Now I'll say this: I thought I expected Dean to make a year's growth. I thought they were well coached on the defensive end in the past, and they come back here and they certainly are grown up. Right? They,
Mhm.
they were kind of a young team in
Yeah.
the past. Obviously, Francis is an elite athlete at 24 there in the opener. I love the versatility of Garrison because I
Mhm.
know I know as Metzger continued to grow at the point. I thought a lot of times, again, there was an example where he would just get kind of into the wolves and say, figure it out. The other day, I saw some versatility from Garrison that kind
Mhm.
of, I'm sure, puts coaches in a little bit of a pickle of, okay, what am I going to do there? If I want to apply pressure, how am I going to handle it if they bring Garrison back to relieve pressure? Am I going to, match up with that, or am I going to keep the same guy? So there's a lot of different things that Adina's doing that
Mhm.
I like. Great start, great culture piece as Coach Day starts in on the boys' side here. Long way to go as you get in the league play, it'll certainly be tough, but no question that Adina looks to be ready to take a major step forward.
Yeah, I agree completely. I was very, pleasantly surprised with what I was able to see. Now, Southeastern,
Yeah.
Braden Burns, Gage Cheadle, they had a really competitive game with Benton County. You lose
Mhm.
a really talented point guard in Lane Williams, but interesting to see just how that game went as Coach Alley keeps trying to bring that program back to where it was before.
Love all the different pieces Southeastern's putting together. I think Coach Alley does a nice job. That was by far my biggest question mark for them. What's the point guard position going to look like? How will it be able to blend into the personnel and the identity that Coach Alley wants to go with? Benton County, we're going to talk about TVC Ohio, obviously, is,
Mm,
is a program that's done a lot of winning. Um, Tight game. I felt like that would be a coin flip game. It's a
mhm.
big win for Benton County. Not the end of the world for Southeastern
Right.
when you'd like to get it home. But I'm anxious to see Southeastern moving forward here, just to see what some of these kids look like in some of these new roles.
Then let's move to Piketon. Piketon had season opening loss to Ross County Christian, then dropped one to Lucasville Valley. But I was happy to see just the minutes that Bo Henry was able to give because it sounded like halfway through football that we weren't sure if we are going to see him at all.
Yeah, I thought Bo looked really good. Coach Miller looked like he was prepared to play him in the 3 and 4 minute spurts. I thought
Mm,
coaching staff did a good job of keeping him fresh, as you'd expect. Down low, it was quite a factor, but I love his versatility where he can step out and extend the floor because I think that
mhm.
becomes a weapon too. They used it strategically. They didn't overdo it, but they bring him out to spread the floor. And remember last week I talked about a lot of different guys. Shanks, Richie, Johnson, Goy, all these guys that averaged a little bit last year,
Mhm.
and I thought, could they take the next jump? I know Golian had a little bit of a struggle from the floor, but he still had double figures, and
Yeah.
he's still a kid that I think again coming out of football is going to naturally shoot the ball with a little bit more rhythm here in a couple weeks.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's panic time for Pike. And I
Yeah.
actually saw some things I really liked out of RCCA. I thought that had more to do with them than it did
Right.
Piketon that day, in my opinion. Maybe you saw it different. Um, but I still think Piketon has um, some pieces here that can come together. They'll struggle to compete at the top of the league, but I could see where they would be really dangerous in getting a couple teams, especially down there in the oven.
Yeah, I agree completely. Then Bay Valley really battled hard last night with Western, ends up losing by 3, but a lot of that was Jace Reinhardt got really going in that fourth quarter.
He did, and look, Paint Valley gets a tough draw when you're asked to open at McLean. I mean,
Yeah.
that's tough. You know what I mean? They played a really good first half, and then it kind of got away from the second half. Last night at Western looked like it was going to be the same story, but to their credit, they fight all the way back and they tie that game at 60. And you're right, Jace got it going there a little bit, and they also got a little bit. I know Scott had a decent first half,
Mhm.
and they just need young guys to get some varsity time under the belt and continue to grow. But you talk about culture. I like a lot of the things I see there in terms of Coach Coleman and the energy that he brings to the program.
Yeah, 100% agree there. So now we're going to jump from the SVC over to the TVC. We're going to go to the Hocking. Not a ton of information here, but Southern won last year with a 9-1 record. However, lost 4 of their last 5 before losing to Manchester in the districts. Andre Chandler, one of the top guards in the Hocking. And then you add in Reed Braniger. Man, the Tornadoes should be one of the favorites in the Hocking.
I think so. Again, you talk about a community that loves the basketball.
Mhm.
I mean that's quite an atmosphere down there on a Friday night. That's a tough place to go play, and yeah, I do. I like some of the pieces they bring back. Um, can they take that next step? I felt I don't want to speak for them, but they probably feel like they left a few things on the
Mm.
table last year, and sometimes that can drive you in a real positive way into the weight room, into open gym, into your off season. So I'm anxious to see them come back this year, just to see if they're able to take that next step.
Yeah, maybe one of the issues though for Southern would be in their 43-40 loss to Caldwell. Brandiger scores 24, Chandler 10. So you only had 6 points outside of those two on the night. So got to figure out something along those lines to make a difference for you when it comes down to winning time late in games to have those other options available
Yeah.
because those two are very good, but you need to have some other
You
options
do just
as
a
well.
little bit more. It's good execution that you're able to get them the ball, but again, that probably, like you said, you give up 43 points. You feel like you should win a game. That's probably a fair point that you're making there to point where you need just maybe one more offensive source.
Yes, and then, for Eastern, they finished a game behind Southern last year. Surprise, surprise between those 2,
Yeah.
really competing for each other. They actually gave Eastern Pike their most competitive game of the tournament last year, losing 66-62 in the district semis. Because really, even going into the regional final, that was less competitive than what that game was. Colton Lloyd returns. He averaged 21 points a game as a junior last year for the Eagles. Big piece to build around. They're very senior heavy. In their season opening loss, Lloyd was held to 11 points. Sam Balk had 12. Derek Barnes 10. Hunter Needs, Lane Atha, Hunter Wilcoxon, some players contributed as well. Now, when you play the defending Division Six state champions, it's going to be a tough way to start your season. But they go 6 of 14 from the free throw line, 15 turnovers. So you got to clean those two things up when you're playing against some of the better teams.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, they come back with
Oh yeah, it gets
legs here
easier.
right off the bat. So,
Yeah,
but again, John, what you were saying there is seniors. So
yeah.
I don't panic too much, even if it leads to 0-2.
Hmm.
I feel like with seniors and some teams that have had some success, that's another athletic department that has
Yes.
good culture down there. They really support a lot of different programs.
Hmm.
And So I wouldn't panic too much if it gets going the wrong direction early. I feel like there's plenty there as they get into league play. So I think we'll need to get probably 4 or 5 games into the season before we get a better look at the Eagles.
Yeah, then Waterford started things off with this kind of uh, I would say, poor shooting outing for them. Gavin Heiner led them with 19 in their 67-44 loss to Philo. Avery Potmeyer with 9, Finn Pinnock with 8. Reese Lang, a name we've heard in different sports as well, had 5. They were 2 of 25 from 3, 8 of 22 from the free throw line. Like, you're not going to win probably any games with those
Yeah,
numbers.
and from the floor, early in the year, without seeing the game, you don't know how many are quality. Sometimes when you shoot bad, it's because you shoot bad.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's because of who you're playing, who's defending you,
Right.
the opponent. But it's probably a little bit of all that. So I think again, you go to the film, you hear so many coaches talk about the improvements you make from game 1 to 2, or maybe games 1 through 4. And I think the reason being is you get out there, it counts for the first time, and you get it on film, and you can step back and say, okay, look, here's what we're doing well, here's what we're not doing well, where can we adjust a little bit? And as a result, you start to eliminate some of those things that are really
Mm.
hurting you, and all of a sudden you play better.
Yeah, and then Trimble also had a sizable loss. And now one of my favorite names, Brady Jazyk, Jajczyzyk. Only a junior. I've seen him play a couple times down at the combo. Really good player though. He had 11 in their season opening loss to South Webster. Dirk Walton had 9. Luke Osborne was 6. Paul Sharp was, or Luke Osborne with 9. Also, Paul Sharp was 6. So, Trimble always a pretty well coached team. I know they had a tough season last year, coming off of a really good year the year before, but they were pretty young. Looks like this year is going to be a little bit of a bounce back year for them. Not an easy way to start with South Webster, but ultimately, I think the Tomcats could be a team to keep an eye on.
Well, and again, with scheduling, don't start panicking off of early season results. Give it a minute.
Hmm.
Let let your team play some different types of opponents, and then get a better feel for who you are and where you need to go.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they're a team to keep an eye on in the TVC Hawking. So do you have anything else on the Hawking?
Uh, Belpre,
Yeah,
that
Belpre.
opened with a loss to Athens, but again,
Mm.
Athens is going to be a good TVC Ohio team. Um, so again, just some of these Hawking teams early on, I've been impressed with who they're willing to play, and,
Yeah.
and I think the summary I had in my notes on the Hawking is just like let's not overreact early on. Let's give some of these teams a chance to play a little bit. Then we'll get a better feel, especially as you get into more of the head-to-head matchups. Because I know later in the year, you and I might gonna have an opportunity, maybe get a TVC hockey game or two
Hmm.
on the string.
Yeah, and we're gonna look to do that. But yeah, when you talk about the Hawking, it's just the teams they play, and the
Hmm.
teams they kinda have to play because of where they are, can
That's a good
really
point.
yeah,
Yeah,
can really factor into some of their schedules because or some of their records, because you look at the Shack, it's like, how are they supposed to play a team from the Shack when, on a Tuesday evening, you're not gonna go 2 hours to go from Belpre
yeah.
to
You call the AD. Hey, you want
yeah,
to drive to Racine? No.
no, yeah,
Hey, you want
so
to come to Belpre? No.
yeah, like, the game we're gonna try to do
Yeah.
is a Shack versus
Yeah, when you told me
TVC.
they were playing, I'll be
Yeah.
honest. My first reaction was, "Oh, I'm surprised they're playing. That's good,
Yeah,
huh?" You
yeah,
know what I mean? Like,
it's a Saturday night.
yeah,
So, I mean, that's, like, the only way to really do it. Now, Fed Hawk came off a tough season last year as well, so, hopefully they're able to, get some footing and turn things around because they
yeah.
had a really nice run over last few
Hmm.
seasons. So, now let's jump to our final league, which is gonna be the TVC Ohio.
Okay.
Last season, the TVC Ohio was led by Megs, who went undefeated. Their closest game was a 14-point win over Athens, being their most competitive. They just completely dominated the TVC last season, but a lot of changes happened for the Marauders. They go 22-2 last season, fell in overtime to New Lexington at the Convo in the district finals. Really good, solid senior class, great length. A lot of those guys 6'4" and above. But maybe most importantly, you lose Reed Brandiger to Southern. He averaged over 15 points a game last year for
Mhm.
them. Just gave them a really nice second piece to go along with Carson Davis, who is a legitimate Division 1 um, prospect. Now you bring in Colton Buechler um, from Oak
Oak
Hill.
Hill, yeah,
Yeah, so that's a really nice piece to pick up. Honorable
sure.
mention, All Ohio as a freshman last year. You have a really good point guard, in Owen Tracy. It's gonna be an interesting season to follow Meg. So that's why I'm really looking forward to us getting them in that game at Westfall, which is a heck of a drive as well. So, but it might take them a little time to coexist and kind of merge. But man, they got some really talented pieces for them.
They do. I watched them on film as well here recently, and I was very impressed with their offensive talent. I mean, as soon as you
Mhm.
turn on the film, you're mentioning a couple different kids there. The offensive talent just pops. You're like, wow, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think as you get into the season, a little bit of the depth. How do they guard? I think this Westfall matchup will be fun, very interesting. I think Megs is a more talented group, but
Mm,
again, Westfall is going to present them some challenges off of dribble penetration and so forth. And I'm just anxious to see their not even their ability, almost their willingness to sit down and guard the basketball because, you know, the thing about a Megs is if if you start to have teams with good guard play dictate the tempo on you, now all of a sudden some of those blowout wins in the past get into tighter
mm.
games in the third and fourth quarter. I want to see if Megs can maybe take a little bit of that next step on the defensive end to where they can almost force you into their tempo and say, no, we're going to play at this level. And man, at that point, they become really tough to handle because they are going to be a tough matchup for just about everybody in the TVC Ohio.
Yes, they definitely will be. And I do think, that New Lexington game last year where it was a big difference in size and kind of the way they play, really is,
But the
yeah,
guard play, didn't you feel like the
yeah,
guard? You see what I'm asking
yeah,
there? Like I'm not saying like Westfall's really good guard play. Now New Lex's guard play was next
right.
level, but like Westfall's really good guard play. So I'm not saying Meg's probably is a more talented group than them. I'm just saying I do think Westfall is a nice test for them earlier in the year to just see how are they going to be able to sit down and guard the basketball.
Yeah, I agree completely. So, Megs did start with a 71-54 loss to Miami Trace, but
Yep,
that's going to happen to a
good
lot of
good
teams.
teams.
That's
Yeah,
going to happen to a lot of teams this year. Another team I want to keep an eye on in the TVC Ohio, Nelsonville York. Last year went 14-9. Buckeyes have Alec Thompson, averaged 15.6 points a game last season. They have Cam Sullivan, Bean Martin, a couple really talented sophomores, Champ Schultz, one of the better names in our area, and Grant Elliott. But they also got a move in from Athens. Weston Wheatley averaged 9.5 points a game last year as a sophomore for the Bulldogs. I think could be a big time addition for Nelsonville York and their chance to make a push at this Megs team.
yeah, I think so. There's a lot of kids athletically there that have done some winning and that we know and um I think the first thing you better be able to do in order to guard Megs is bring a little physicality to the table, and I think they'll certainly do that. Agree?
Yeah.
I mean, like so, I think what you're saying there makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think they're going to be an interesting team to watch. River Valley, as we both think they're going to be improved. Braden Bennett last year averaged 14 points a game. Honorable mention All Ohio as a junior. They're a team that the Raiders are typically pretty up and down, but they could be a team to keep an eye on.
Got to commit to the defensive end.
Yep.
Again, we just highlighted earlier in the SOC, had a young man score what, 35 against
Yep.
them. So you score, I don't have that in front of me, you score 70 points and
Yeah,
lose a
74
basketball
in that
game
game.
and you lose.
Yep.
So, you know what I mean? So you see where I'm coming from there?
Hmm.
Like, obviously, you are more talented than years past to be able to score the ball and so forth. But I'm telling you, that defensive end and that willingness to sit down and that's going to be huge.
Yeah, and then a team you're very familiar with, Vinton County. It's been a long time since they've had a losing season. They started off with a nice win.
Yeah, they do big win at Southeastern. Like you said, I don't know the exact years. I think it's been like 22 years or whatever since they've had one. So that's a big factor. I know Josh Montgomery returns for the Vikings, a nice player, good all around player. I know Nash Yates, Jace Moore would be a good player. So they certainly have some kids coming back, and Coach Kite will again, you talk about culture, you talk about tradition, you talk about what it means to put that uniform on, and the expectation is to win.
Hmm.
So they're going to go out there and do that. Um, and I think they still carry a little bit of that across the TVC. I think they're still considered a team that is it's a tough place to play, and when they come to your place over the years, obviously they've won a lot of TVC games. So I think that continues to carry some weight.
And then Athens goes 500 last year. Obviously, you lose Wheatley to Nelsonville York, so that's going to be a big
Right.
piece. Leo Martin is another big time graduate for them. But Zachariah Mullins, Colin Chapman are a couple big pieces coming back for them. They can be an interesting team to watch. Typically, they win a lot of games. Coming off a 500 season, though, could be a rebuilding year for Athens, but typically they do a lot of winning over there in the Plains.
That they do, and that's a tough place to play. And
Mhm.
again, the style they play, a lot of times over the years they've been known for being able to mix a lot of zones and some different things, and tough to score against. And so a lot of unique matchups, a lot of different types of styles there in the TVC Ohio makes it difficult to play against. And you talk about the coaching. I know you talked about Blaine Gabriel there at
Mhm.
Nelsonville and Coach Kite at Benton County, and obviously Coach Davis at May. And again, on down the line, there's some really good coaching in that league.
Yeah, and then Wellston, I know had a couple pieces last year. It was a tough season for them, but ultimately, tough places to play. Wellston and Alexander as well, so could be tough years there, but never easy to play there. Alexander last year at the Alley went 6-6, 1-10 on the road.
Well, and that's the thing. Again, tough places to play. Coach Hill will do a real nice job there at Alexander with 7 wins last year. They did graduate quite a bit,
Yeah.
but they returned Bateman and Pletz and Ray and Cooper and some guys there. So um, just I like the stat you ended up giving there because that's what can happen in that TVC. You go on the road, you get some bus trips, you get some different places to play.
Mhm.
They have some great atmosphere, some really passionate fan bases, some good student sections, and it just takes one night where you're not ready to go on the road, and it can cost you a big time in your overall goal in the year.
Yeah, exactly. So that's our boys basketball preview. Took a little bit of time on it, so I
Mhm.
mean but that's part of what we do is
Just trying to get the whole
yeah,
coverage area.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's without mentioning Ross County Christian, who we had on stream. It looks like they're bound to have another nice year. 17-12 last year. They are getting closer to joining the OHSA, and then we'll talk about that more once that becomes official or whatnot. That'll be something that we can talk about, like what happens when you become affiliated. But they should have a nice season. New Hope we get to see a little bit younger team than what they normally have. They should be fun to watch
Yeah.
throughout the season. Really well coached. Both of those are well coached teams. Um, you know, Logan has a couple of pieces coming back. They're going to be probably going to be a tough season. Hunter Edwards, really nice player for them. But for them, keep an eye on them. They're going to be joining the MSL very soon. So we'll be talking about them more as that time comes around. So, yeah, so this week our streaming is going to be on the boys' side, going to be Monday, or not Monday, Tuesday is going to be I'm getting lost at this point. Westfall at Zane Trace. We talked about a little bit. That's gonna be on Tuesday. And then Saturday, Megs at Westfall. Those are gonna be our boys streaming games. And then our girls streaming games, which we'll talk about girls basketball here coming up. A really fun one on Monday is gonna be Piketon at Logan Elm.
I think that's going to be a really good one. Good guard play. You look at their matchups early in the year so far; they've been really competitive against some pretty solid teams, and so I'm really anxious to make the trip there to Pickaway County tomorrow night with you. Call that one.
Yeah, so that's gonna be some really good guard play in that. Kiana Ingram against Layla Kelly. Ingram for Logan Elm, Kelly for Piketon. Some really good scorers that can also do it on the defensive end as well.
Yeah, I've been real impressed with both teams on either in person or on film defensively, and that's what intrigues me about that matchup tomorrow night. Even with some of the offensive talent, You almost wonder, depending on how it's officiated, if points can be hard to come by.
Yeah, it could definitely be a difficult game as far as scoring. And like we talked about, we're going to talk much more on the girls'
Yeah,
side next week. This week has been, mostly on the boys' side. Last week, the little bit we talked about on the boys' side was about the Zane Trace preview.
right,
We don't have that coming up with
right.
on the girls' side. So next week, look for a more balanced coverage on the girls' basketball
I
side.
think by the time we come together next week, we'll have a much better picture of how some things are going to start to unfold. You'll have some matchups to go off of. Obviously, long season ahead. I just feel like we'll have a better feel for some of the head-to-head matchups, and once you see a team play that second or third time, you start to get a better feel for 'em.
Yeah, and then, like, some teams just had an entire week off this
Yeah.
week as well, so, I mean, you didn't see a whole lot, as far as girls basketball went this week. Now, I got to see, a really good one with North Adams at West on Monday.
Yeah.
Tinsley Burns for North Adams is going to be really fun to watch, and then, a lot of pistols in that game. There's 2 pistols for North Adams, and then Braley Pistol for West was really good down the stretch, especially early in that game, and then Haley Carver, Macy Wisman, got going down the stretch, and then, Maddie Lawless hits a 3 with 18 seconds left to give West their first lead since the opening minute of the
Mm.
game, to win that game. A really fun matchup on the West side.
Well, and then when you mentioned that, I think West coming back against Piketon, I thought that final score caught my attention even more so for
Mhm.
Piketon than maybe Piketon's win over Waverly did.
Right. Yeah, so, I mean, that was, a really eye-opening game to see West get that win, and then to go the next night to beat Piketon was just really impressive.
And even on the Python side, what I'm
Yes.
talking about is the Python's ability to go toe to toe, which kind of gives you an idea of them, how they stack up with the North Adams Portsmouth West, makes me kind of excited for their year's growth. Because remember how when we talked about them, um, can they take that step and start to separate themselves from the rest of the SVC, trying to get that two hole?
And then I saw another one on Tuesday, which was Logan Elm with a really good win over McLean. And you watched McLean on film, and that really made that Logan Elm win stand out even
Yeah,
more.
it did because I thought, man, the number one thing that jumped out at me about McLean was their physicality. I thought they were really, really impressive. Their ability to win the paint, win the glass, do some different things. So that told me a lot there about Logan Elm as well, in terms of their ability to just be able to handle the basketball and play through some of that physicality.
Yeah, it was a very physical game overall. Obviously, Kiana Ingram's always outstanding, but you also had a really nice night from Kimmy Petty. She hits a big three with about 5 minutes left to give them a lead that they did not give up again. But they got a really nice addition with Palin Ray. Really makes that Logan Elm team really dangerous. Then you have Kennedy Groff mixed in. They had some really good plays from some young kids. Malia Gardner was good in that game as well,
Yeah.
and they did it without Jillian Savage, who, by all accounts, will be back on Monday.
Well, that guard play is such a key too. The biggest way to offset some physicality sometimes is be able to be real clean with the basketball. I think sometimes what happens, get these teams that can't dribble, pass, and catch, and it
Mhm.
just makes the game really ugly.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? But the guard play is what early in the year seems to be the theme of what's separating some of these teams from others.
yeah, and that's what I think we'll have to keep an eye on this week as we, um, you know, make adjustments to what we see in our kind of thought process for this week coming up. So just kind of looking at the week ahead, for Monday, you've got some different interesting games. I think McLean at Lynchburg will be interesting because Lynchburg had a really good
Lynchburg had a
win,
nice win.
nice win over Eastern
Well, we
Brown.
and we said that on our preview show last week of like of what Lynchburg was going to be able to do, and it ended up taking about a week to prove us right.
Yep, exactly. So another one that I think Vinton County at Waverly. Vinton County had won that the Total Media Tip Off Classic. They won that. They jump off 2-0. They won 15 games last year. Waverly had a rough start, but then they bounced back pretty well.
Waverly was an interesting group. You watched them play Piketon. It was that opening night situation where they just struggled against Piketon to handle the ball. Piketon defended really well. Watching them play against Southeastern and their next matchup, uh, you could see them a little bit more freedom and space, and you could see some of their skill set. And they ended up scoring like 60 points that night. So it's interesting matchup to matchup what you get when you put that in there. But you're right, that could be an interesting one to watch.
A couple on Tuesday. You got Chesapeake at Portsmouth, and Chesapeake got a new addition this year that's going to make them a little bit better. Man, that Portsmouth team, let's see what they can do early on. They had a tough loss to open up. Now they're going to host to start their OVC. That'll be on Tuesday. A really good one on Tuesday in the TVC across division game. Alexander at Federal Hockey.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so-
And because again, you talk about great guard play, that's what Alexander has. So
Mhm.
anytime you can be that good at guard, you're going to have a chance to go in and control some tempo. But you're right, that Fed Hoc team can really play. It can score.
Yeah, then we kind of, Athens at Circleville on Wednesday, Fort Fry at Belpre. That's a game over on that side. Fort Fry went to the Final Four last year. That
Mhm.
Belpre team is going to be really good once again. So keep an eye out on those games. I'm just scrolling through at this point and just finding some
Yeah.
pretty good ones
Yeah.
at this point. South Gallia at Valley, I think has an interesting could be interesting on Thursday. Lynchburg at North Adams is another one that
Oh,
night.
absolutely. Yeah. That's a tough week for Lynchburg.
Yeah, yeah, just you get to kind of see where they're at pretty early on. Um, Alexander at Vinton County on Friday, another tough week for them, and that was kind of when we were looking at, oh, maybe we can get them, and this is a week we're doing 4 games already, so it's makes that a little more difficult. Um, and then Saturday, you got Union against Bishop Hartley, Adina at Piketon. That'll be one just to see
Well,
where.
it's a huge standings game.
Yeah. Then obviously we'll be at Southeastern at Westfall for that one, so keep an eye out on that game. Um, yeah, so I mean, I think it's gonna be a fun week. Williamsburg at Fayetteville kind of might be the first chance to really see where how Fayetteville is on the season, and then Logan Elm at Circleville is also on Saturday night. So I mean,
And
those.
that'll be again, these early season games in the standings. I know basketball's a double round, where in
Mhm.
football sometimes it's more of the gotta have the urgency right now. But if you can win, and you talked earlier about sometimes starting on the road. Sometimes if you can win some big games on the road, it really flips the schedule in your favor because you get those out of the way, and then you have the opportunity to have those home games second half of the year. That can be a big factor.
Yep, 100%. And then also Sunday, 3 different teams, well, actually 4 different teams are playing. Hillsborough against North Union, Waterford, and Amanda Clear Creek. Those 3 teams are all playing at Ohio Dominican, and then Portsmouth gets Reynoldsburg at Westville
Nice.
South. That's
Yeah.
all. That's all
Yeah.
on Sunday. So, also on Sunday, the Haynes-Stoll Healthcare Coaches Call-in Show will return Sunday night. Which, if we go this long when we do our show, then we ain't starting that show on time. So,
We'll have to do better.
yeah, we'll do a little bit better starting next week. So, you got anything else?
I think I'll do it. Just excited to get really into full swing of the stream. Um, just, just make sure you subscribe so you can see them all. And remember, you can always go back and watch them back. 'Cause I
Yeah.
know sometimes you're out at your game following your team. What I like is, get settled in the other night, and I probably watched 3 or 4 basketball games just the other night from home. And it was just a lot of fun to follow.
Yeah, just you can see as many teams as really you want to see at this point. So we're gonna have try to get as many schools on as possible. I counted it up earlier in the year. It's going to be a lot of different schools that are going to be covered this year on our live streaming between me, Shayne, Carson Francis, Kenneth Hay, maybe Dewey Daly in there as well. So we'll see throughout the year. But we had a great first week and look forward to another fun week this week.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so for Shayne Combs, I'm John Bruce. You've been watching SOSA Overtime presented by Perfection One. Have a great